call that radio? You call that radio TV? No. You call that radio TV?
This is You Call That Radio.
This is You Call That Radio TV. Tonight is a very special episode. I'm really looking forward to this one. It's the Age of Aquarius. As a kind of sort of broad sort of outlook, it's an Age of Aquarius special, but I'll be talking about various other things, including the mad stuff that's happening in the planets tonight. There is the Great Conjunction, which is two planets aligned with each other, so it looks like one big planet. We're also going to be talking about solstice stuff, magic. We're just going to be taking a deep dive into the unknown. So if you think anyone would be interested in hearing about that stuff, then just tag them and share the link about your social medias. Also, yeah, if you think that you actually want to add anything to this conversation, then feel free to call in, or if anyone's got a question about the unknown, then feel free to just leave a comment. We have luckily we've got some actual experts that are going to be joining me, because it's a little bit, I don't really know. I'm very curious about all this stuff, but it's stuff that I'm not that aware of myself, so I'm really interested to hear more about it. But I just want to say thank you to everybody who performed or tuned into the show on Saturday night for our Christmas party at Capture Watts. It was a great night. Thank you so much to everyone who got involved, and the performers, especially the ones who performed at such short notice. Everybody smashed it. Thanks to everyone who supported the PayPal, made a donation on PayPal or coffee.com, or became a patron. We're up to 193 patrons, I think, now, which is amazing. So we've got 7 more to go to break the record. Hopefully do that before Christmas. But if not, it doesn't matter, because it's been an amazing journey and we're nearly there regardless of what happens. So thank you, Christmas people. I'm going to bring on our special guests. We've got 3 special guests that I know of, at least. There might be more joining us later on, but let's welcome them to the stage. It's the Age of Aquarius, the Great Conjunction, the Solstice special of You Call That Radio TV. Let's give our guests a round of applause.
You Call That Radio.
Fucking radio. Here to tell people that we hear you. One God will not allow.
You Call That Radio.
However you want to say it.
You Call That Radio.
You call that radio?
However you want to say it, that's kind of part of the fun.
Powered by our patrons.
Brothers and sisters.
We are indeed powered by our patrons. There is no sponsorship. There is no corporate funding. There's no funding apart from Patreon. So if you do want to help us build this thing, if we've enjoyed the shows we've done this year, I think we're about 180 shows, then you can become a patron at patreon.com/You Call That Radio. And if you enjoyed the show on Saturday and you just like to make a one-off donation, then you can do so at paypal.me/You Call That Radio. I've got Alan Rorison saying, evening, apologies, I missed Saturday. I had a belated birthday celebration. No need to apologise, Alan. I'm really glad that you had a birthday celebration at all. Well deserved, and I'm glad you did have fun. James Solson, you're an absolute legend, Mark. You're an absolute legend, James. Hopefully I'll get a bit of time off at the start of January to work on that track, that beat that you sent me. Ali says, happy birthday, Alan, but you missed the gig of your life. Maybe we can get some highlights to you, Alan, since it was your birthday. Let's bring on our first guest. I'm really looking forward to this one. We're going to be diving into the unknown. What does it all mean? What is the planets about? What are they doing today? Why is today so important? What is solstice about? Why is this the new age of Aquarius? this show is, I believe, 2,700 years in the making. That's probably the wrong number, but Chris Herron, I'm sure, will confirm that. Guest first introduces Joe Dark. Joe Dark, how are you doing?
Hey. Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. What is what does, when I say Age of Aquarius, what does it make you think of?
the song. No, I'm joking. Which is a belter though. But yeah, I mean, I suppose it's just about this kind of idea of cycles and about different kind of and about time kind of in general. And like, I'm not an expert on this stuff at all, but just I love it, and I'm dead interested in it. So I'm really interested to hear what the others have got to say, because I'm sure they've got hundreds of facts about it. But yeah, I suppose it's just about this idea of moving into, well, a different phase of time, whatever that means, that may be different for the good, hopefully, but maybe not. It depends. Like, different people have got different perspectives about it. So yeah, it's
right stuff. And this kind of ties in with your journey this year, which is been obviously with live events being taken away from you. You've been kind of more looking at other things like yoga, and this sort of fit in with what you've been learning about.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, all this kind of the whole thing, it all just ties in with lots of stuff I've been reading and looking at. I mean, for my whole life, actually, I've been interested in this kind of thing since I was a kid. Actually, quite a weird child, but yeah, just this kind of past few months, I've just done my yoga teacher training, so I've kind of been immersed myself in a lot of kind of yoga philosophy, but other kind of philosophy around about the same kind of concepts about like how to live your life, how to be the best you can be, and also kind of the bigger questions about what does it all mean? Why are we here? What
why are we here?
And all this kind of
why are we all here? Questions. What is this? Yeah. What is happening?
Yeah,
what is this all about?
What the fuck is going on?
What is going on? Let's ask guest number 2, Chris Herron. Why are we all here? What is going on?
Hi Joe. Hi Mark.
Hey. Good.
What's going on? I hear that there's planets in the sky doing some crazy things tonight.
Yeah, it's all aligning. I think you might have got astrology mixed up with astronomy. I'm more of an amateur astronomer than an astrologer, but I do know a little bit about it. Some of the esoteric knowledge about it, and it is kind of tarnished with this whole hokey pokey horoscopes, mystic meg kind of psychic stuff, but there is actual science in there somewhere. So hopefully between the 4 of us, we'll be able to unpick some of the science from the mysticism.
And I think one of the things, just right off the bat, for people who are maybe just tuned in, is we did have a conversation last week, Chris, or 2 weeks ago, or whatever it was, and we're discussing about the fact that, although we are going to be trying to look at the science, we're also going to be looking at stuff that has no science, because we're all in agreement that obviously there's a lot of things that science doesn't know yet as well. So we're going to be open-minded towards things that we maybe don't understand, that doesn't have any scientific basis just yet.
Yeah, well, I spent most of my 20s very immersed in science, and of a more cynical nature, and of a more atheistic, anti-theist nature. And then psychedelics kicked my ass several times and showed me God. And there's a point when you're constantly striving for new knowledge, there is a point where science stops. And then you have to go over into the sort of spiritual, esoteric kind of realm, the occult even. Your next guest I'm sure he knows how to summon the devil himself.
Let's bring him on. The next guest is Texture, who played a phenomenal gig on Saturday night at our Christmas party. How you doing, man? Did you enjoy Saturday night?
Oh man, I wanted to start off by just thanking you for that. What an incredible thing to go into this little shed that's full of lights and sound equipment and play a proper gig with your beats amplified. Oh man, thank you for letting me be a small part of that. I loved so many moments of it as well. Like Gmo's performance was just really memorable. You know what I mean? One of those ones that you witnessed and you won't forget.
Absolutely, so man. Well, thank you very much as well for all you did with just sort of looking after the beat side of things as well, because I was going to DJ the beats, but I was just like, do you know what? I've got to it's bad enough that I decided to throw myself in to fill a gap in the hole by performing. But it was one of the rules that I made up. I was like, right, okay, if you're organising a gig, don't perform at the gig from now on. Try and separate, because it's two different people in it.
Well, you know what?
Why being a DJ on top of that would probably not be the best way forward.
You know what? Another thing I enjoyed, man, was just seeing you run around with an earpiece, like just being in charge of shit. That was fucking cool, man. Like, I was just impressed at some other fucker. It's like,
it's actually a bit more fun when like at the boat party, local boat party, or Audio Soup, and actually had a walkie-talkie. Now that's when you've got an earpiece and a walkie-talkie, and maybe even a high-vis vest. Then you're running shit. You're running shit.
Real, man. Maybe a clipboard.
Yeah, but the earpieces for people to tell. Let's be clarified. The earpieces for people to tell me what to do. You know, if it was me that was getting to tell people what to do, then I would have some sort of talking device, I'm sure. But yeah, man, thank you very much for doing it. Thank you to everyone who performed or tuned in. It's not online now because I think it's important for us all to still have some sort of shared real-time experiences that if you don't go to the gig, you miss it. And I think that's important. So it means that hopefully next time more people tune in and so on. But we'll be releasing highlights over 2021 from some of the best moments, and some of the sets will be getting will become available online in time. So yeah, shout outs to Raymond Dito was tuned in all night. He says Saturday was amazing, well done. Colette says hi all. Joe, you're looking bra, babes. Keep yourself safe, folks. Love, baby.
Cheers,
doll. Thank you, Colette, for tuning in. All right, okay, guys. So let's just start this off. So we're going to be covering a range of things today. But what is the Age of Aquarius? Does anyone want to define what that is? And is this the Age of Aquarius? Because I remember now, my rough knowledge. I remember going back maybe 14 years, I'm guessing, was when the Zeitgeist movement was kind of happening. And I remember there was chat that we were moving at the Age of Aquarius then. Yeah. Is it just basically a case of nobody knows exactly when it is? What is the ages? Can someone just define that first of all?
I can give you a full background quickly if you want.
That'd be good. Just so we know what comics. I'm sure most people are like just tuned in going, what? I thought they were just going to talk about crisps.
I did take some notes, so I'll just give you a quick background just to set the scene for what we're supposedly talking about. Okay? Not necessarily the truth, but this is the facts. Each zodiac sign is composed of 30 degrees. Each astrological age is 72 years. Times that by 30 degrees is 2,160 years. So every 2,160 years, we enter a new constellation. And I've wrote down all the ages. Shall I just go through them quickly?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll batter through the ones we've done. Age of Cancer, 8,640 to 6,480 BC, which was Neolithic culture, the invention of agriculture, Paleolithic, Mesolithic. Age of Gemini was 6,480 to 4,320 BC, which was the first real industrial age with craft industry, ceramics, the birth of language like European Pro-Indo, the Chinese language, the beginning of traditional art. The Age of Taurus was 4,320 BC to 2,160 BC, when we started money, banking, towns, markets, civilization as we know it arose, Sumerians, writing, ancient Egypt, the pyramids, and we worshipped gods through this age. Age of Aries was 2,160 to 0 BC. And that was warfare, military, the Hittites, the Babylonians, the Iron Age, the Assyrians, the ancient Greeks, Romans, and it was an age of heroes, right? This is the age we're just coming out of, is the age of Pisces, which is 0 to 2,160 AD. That's organized religion, organized crime, governments, prophecies, an age of saints, sages, and gurus. And then finally, Age of Aquarius, 2,160 to 2020 AD, the battle between light and dark, the release from reincarnation, imprisonment on the wheel of life, or enlightenment. So darkness or light, basically. And that's us up to date.
And when you say up to date, we don't know exactly when this is. So is that why people were kind of assuming that it was going to be 2012 because that kind of ties in with the Mayan calendar? Or do we just know? Why are people saying that now? They think it's because I hadn't really heard much about the ages since sort of probably 2012, and then it just seems like this last month or something, everyone's just been growing that this is the age of Aquarius. Is it because it's solstice? Is it because of this great conjunction that's happening in the sky tonight? Bram, what do you think? What's going
on? I think we tend to have a very anthropocentric view of these kind of like ways of measuring time that Chris is talking about. Our view of that thing is, how is this going to affect our politics, our world, our destiny, our fate? All of which are concepts which go back to Greek antiquity and beyond. The zodiac stuff that Chris is talking about is ancient. We were talking earlier about like the boundary between mysticism and science, and weirdly, in the history of magic, that there is no boundary there if you go back far enough. And that's even in recent history, early in very recent history, you wouldn't have a court astrologer, for instance, someone to consult the heavens and tell you what was going to happen. The idea of alchemy being separate from science is a very recent thing. So there's all sorts of currents in this. And I think that if you go back to the origins of reading the stars, you go back into prehistory, those early ages that Chris was describing. I think Cicero in the 1st century BC referred to Chaldean astronomers. That was kind of the first reference to guys that looked at the sky in classical history. We can probably push that back even further. But it's fascinating to me that kind of predates all of the scientific knowledge that we regard as like rational or factual. People have always read the stars and read patterns in them. So I don't know, in terms of the dawning of a new age, I think that there have been various kind of like maths solutions to when the age of Aquarius began or would have ended. I think various people have kind of declared it in the same way that people declare that the world's going to end on September 15th, 2024. These dates can come and go, and I think they have to do with somebody picking a date, making the maths work, and that's much more about them and the conclusions they want to draw. But back in the depths of ancient time, I think people viewed stuff more along the lines of societies, of tribes, of the great movements of history. They maybe had a longer view. Their lives were much shorter. They were more likely to end in death. So perhaps they had like a less individualistic view of things. I think it's easy for us to take the things that they made stories out of and make it stories about us. Do you know what I mean? We are but playthings for the gods was very much, the epitome of Greek philosophy too, or certainly the Greek epics. So that procession from magic into science, I think, is way more complicated than most people really appreciate or bother to consider.
And so you think maybe humans are just living too long?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think it's more that, like Chris was saying, we have all the kind of, horoscopes in the daily paper, Mystic Meg type of stuff, which people are very skeptical about. A horoscope initially would have been something very, very complicated, drawn up by somebody with great language skills, like a vast array of ability to read scrolls in ancient and dead languages, with incredibly precise mathematical knowledge about the observed motion of the stars. And they would combine this into an incredibly complicated chart that would then inform government policy on economics, on war, on succession. So, these things until very recently were considered real and were considered part of a scientific system. So to dismiss them just on the basis of them being, diminished crap versions of them that we have left is something a bit simplistic,
Yeah. So do you think we're with going back to the timescale thing, obviously, because we are inherently trying to see patterns that affects us. So by trying to look for the pattern, there is no exact date where a new age dawns. It's not about that.
Well,
what Tam Levan's and he says he was told this 25 years ago as well. So what we're saying is that generally it's in this ballpark, as in AKA our lifetime is in the ballpark of the age of Aquarius changing.
But the
I read.
Mayan long count thing. Sorry, Joe, I'll shut up
You're
in a
killing
minute.
it.
The Mayan
You're
long
killing
count
it.
thing is a really, really good example. You know, everybody thought that like in 2012 a big shift was going to happen or something was going to change. But I don't think the Mayans who wrote those prophecies thought of it like that. The way that they thought of these cycles was more in the story of like broad humanity rather than the people that were alive at the time. So all of these ideas about apocalypses or ages ending or beginning, we see that very much as like a historical moment. Maybe they didn't, you know. Sorry, Joe, please.
No, I was just going to say that I read something while I was kind of reading up a little bit the stuff for this, and I really liked it. It was in relation to the yogas, which is like kind of the Hindu kind of version or kind of of that idea of the different kind of ages, and just like how the Mayans had it and the Toltec and whatever kind of had all their own slightly different versions. So the like there's the yogas, which is kind of the same thing. But I read about that, and so but in the yogas there's 5 different phases, and it's all like kind of going from the golden age as your first age, and then kind of going through to the final age, which is kind of, I suppose, what we're in just now. That is the suggestion, and it's kind of a bit shit. Like, you know, people like being selfish and not kind of looking after each other and all that kind of thing. So it was talking about that, but then this other person came on and was talking about the idea of time, and you know, if you're into like quantum physics or any of that kind of thing, about like what is time and where, you know, how is it linear or whatever. But he was saying that if you live your life as you're in the golden age, then you will be in the golden age, because that's kind of what you're going to, you know, that's what you're going to kind of be attracting, I suppose, or and if you live your life like you're in Kali, it's called, like the kind of the age of kind of selfishness and being rubbish to each other, then that's kind of where you are going to live, because that's what you're kind of putting out and what you'll get back. But obviously I still don't think these things about what you put out is what you'll get back, because I know lots of people that put out lots of good and then they still get back shit. So it's more complicated than that as well. But I did quite like that idea of like kind of stepping, it's kind of what you're saying, Bram, a little bit about kind of stepping out of this idea of kind of linear time and then looking at, well, what do you know, what could those kind of concepts that have been like drawn up mean beyond that kind of thing. So yeah, don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, no,
absolutely does. Yeah.
Chris, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, well, I started off doing like a background of the zodiac. The disclaimer is I don't necessarily believe any of that. If you want to bring a bit of science into it, then I would say it's very, very obvious that the stars, the planets, the solar system all works in cycles. You can take it down from the smallest cycle, which is like a menstrual cycle, which is monthly, up to the weeks, the years, and then the solar years, blah, blah, blah. And we all know inherently that the sun grows the plants and gives us life and affects your moods. And you can see that the moon affects moods because of full moons affecting people because of the menstrual cycle as well. So it definitely does all run in cycles. And to throw a bit of science in there, when a human being is saturated with electromagnetic energy, it's detrimental to them. It makes them sort of crazy and negative in a way. And when there's less of that, they're more free to sort of be enlightened, so to speak. And so the Earth is constantly moving, like something like 360 million light years every single year. We move through space. So there's all these different areas of space we're encountering all the time. Even though it feels like we're going nowhere, we're constantly on the move. We're constantly being bombarded with all sorts of stuff from space. A lot of it we probably don't even understand. So I do think inherently there's obviously all life revolves around these cycles of the stars. The Egyptians built their pyramids in the mirror image of it. And what's inside you is no less infinite and no less small than what's outside you. It's all connected anyway, you know what I mean? We live inside our bodies as if that's separate, but it's not separate. It's all, you're the center of the cosmos, so to speak, because it's projecting out of you and each one of us, you know? So it does have an effect, I would say. Electromagnetic energy.
And so talking about electromagnetic energy, and so what's happening tonight is you've got the conjunction in the sky, which is, I believe, Jupiter and Saturn crossing paths for the first time in 20 years. And
I
it looks
think
to
they're
us,
doing that within. I think they're doing that within Aquarius as well, which is one of the reasons why it's kind of this kind of conclusion that this is the age of Aquarius. It's like like Bram said, much more complicated than that to like work out why just now is the time that's one of the times it's been picked as. But yeah, so it's a powerful kind of Aquarian point. If you, again, depending on your views, and I'm somewhere in the middle. I think I'm probably with you, Bram, about there is a much more complicated system that I think there is definitely something to, that goes back a long time. So like I am kind of up for I'm up for star signs and stuff, but again, Mystic Meg is it's yeah.
well, I think
that's
the thing
like
about Mystic
what
Meg is it's that newspaper. That newspaper horoscope where it's basically like, you will face challenges on a Tuesday, and you will face challenges on a Tuesday, and that kind of lucky colour for the day is red. So something, you can assign meaning to stuff this vague like that as well. But if there's a planetary change, so we're talking about electromagnetic, we're talking about the tides and stuff like that, where the tides comparing to menstrual cycles and stuff like that, then something big happening in the sky should technically affect something that's happening here, which I find obviously quite interesting, although I don't understand enough to have a belief set in it either. But what do you think what is this all about then, Jupiter and Saturn, Bram? What you got, just specifically the Great Conjunction in the sky, just a little bit about that for people who maybe who don't know about it.
Well, I think just to touch on horoscopes again, I don't know if you read the Douglas Adams novels about Dirk Gently's holistic detective agency. There's one of those where essentially somebody who absolutely hates him has gotten the job at the local paper writing horoscopes just to predict that every day he'll have a shitty fucking day. So I think that's, you can't discount human agency in the writing of things like horoscopes. And like we said earlier, there used to be very precise things that were worked out by people with a lot of knowledge. So I think that's where we can come in on the conjunction thing, is that this is a phenomenon that is happening in the space of physics, as Chris very, very, eloquently put it. It's happening out there in the world of science and measuring things, and that conjunction is a physical event in space that we now understand in a specific way. But for going back into deep time, we would have drawn other meanings from it, and the zodiac and things like that are kind of like the remnant of that old esoteric knowledge. Chris used the word occult. Like, occult doesn't mean dark or demonic, it just means hidden. It literally means hidden. And the question is, why was that knowledge hidden? So if there is meaning now for somebody, in a society that's very commercial, quite denuded of like spiritual feelings and like just being connected to the symbols that emerge in the world, whether that's planets conjoining or floods happening at a certain time or locusts coming down at a certain time. These things had a symbolic weight that in the past, that even if I think necessarily we don't understand them now, we can still feel their symbolic weight. So I think that's why we still want to see these things align. It's not because we're like, oh, some science is happening in the sky, But the thing is, as well, is that science is as weird as magic was. Quantum physics is the perfect example of that. And, the understanding of time on that scale of, galactic time. In fact, is gravity affects time. If you're in the inside of a black hole, time is going to run in a different speed from somebody on the outside of that black hole. So the universe is a super weird place where things like time and the way that we perceive it become like completely irrelevant because things happen over such a span of millennia. So that's, I think, why I like to exist in that space. I like to think about concepts, about to do with the planets or the way that orbits affect things, like Planet 9. If you start reading about Planet 9, there's some fascinating stuff there. And more the science supports the ancient theories, which go back to as far as Sumer, that there was a planet that had an elliptical orbit and only came around a certain amount of times. So all of these things that, used to be mysticism become science. And then we exist in this zone where science is the body of the weird in our imagination. That's what space is to me. It's the weird.
Is when you're talking about the time, when it keeps on coming up, the linear time and stuff like that. Do we? I mean, I think most people have had the experience where, you know, time goes in slow motion when something maybe overly dramatic is happening, or obviously, you know, I think everyone can relate to time dragging in if you're waiting for something to happen as well. Is it just like that, except more, or are we talking about linear time as in, like, you know, we're living in a loop, nothing really lives or dies, kind of thing? Chris?
Well, there's definitely not really any such thing as linear time other than what we measure with clocks. Time's very malleable and it's relative to the observer. So everyone experiences time differently, and that really is happening. Like if twins are born and one's at the bottom of a mountain and one's at the top of a mountain and they live their lives separate like that, the twin at the bottom of the mountain will age quicker than the twin at the top of the mountain, because the twin at the top of the mountain is further away from the core of gravity. And the closer time gets to mass and gravity in an object, the faster it moves, and the further away, the slower it moves. So if you were born in orbit and you lived your whole life in orbit on a space station until you were like, you know, well, you would probably live to 100, 120, 140. We don't know, it's not happened, but time moves slower. And if we had technology that could travel at the speed of light, we could go to a black hole, according to Stephen Hawking, this is, of course, travel around this black hole at the speed of, or close to the speed of light. And then after 10 years, you come back to Earth. And on Earth, like 100 years has passed. For you, 10 years has passed, but you've both spent the exact same amount of time. So you've literally traveled 90 years into the future. It is possible, and we know how to do it. We just can't travel at the speeds required yet. So time's very malleable. It does slow down. When you're in a dangerous, like that whole Radiohead album, OK Computer, was that not all meant to take place within 60 seconds of a car crash? Because it all slows down. Your whole life flashes. When I took a really strong hit of salvia, my whole life flashed before my eyes, and I felt like I experienced my whole entire life, but in the space of 7 minutes, which is a very, very overwhelming, very intense thing to go through. And I believe that must be what people also experience when they say, you know, these near-death experiences. So yeah, time's malleable, whatever your point was. It's not linear. Yeah.
And it's good to know that you get your life flashing before your eyes. I think that, you know, after everything you're put through on this earth, it'd be good to at least get a highlights reel at the end. You know what I mean? That's, it's only fair, I think. It's only fair. Pillowstone Project says cycles, patterns, archetypes are fundamental at all levels of the macrocosm and microcosm. Science calls us fractals, and mysticism,
as above,
hermetism especially, uses the term as above, so below. Bram, you're nodding. You seem to know about this. What would you say?
So he's an incredibly important figure in science, magic, and philosophy. Is Hermes Trismegistus, and he's credited as being the figure that came up with as above, so below. And even the identities of Hermes is you know, one of these things that's like quite a kind of historical riddle as well, with lots of different certain conspiracy theories about it. He's, you know, kind of one of the founding fathers of magic. I'm sure Chris would be able to tell you about that too. But I think, you know, that like that's one of the interesting points for me, is where, you know, ideas from philosophy and physics and spirituality actually do tend to agree. And time is one of those areas. The more we understand about time, the more we understand that the linearity of it is something that we perceive, but that we project retroactively in terms of the neuroscience of it. We kind of like create a story, like an illusion that there has been linear time, and that deceiving ourselves that that's not how time really works is how it works. They think that really, you know, animals exist in a kind of an all-seeing ever now, that the idea of a future and a past to them would be absurd.
The eternal now, is that the same thing as the eternal now?
There's a famous speech from the show True Detective where Russ Cole, the detective who's quite often a mouthpiece for Nietzsche in that show, says time is a flat circle, and he's imagining time from outside the human perspective. You know, if we exist in 3 dimensions which go forward and backward in time, he's imagining time from the 4th dimensional perspective, which, you know, if there was any kind of omnipotent being, that's how it would observe time. I think his point is that nobody's observing it, but that's how it really is. Time is a flat circle. Everything that you've ever done has happened, will happen, is going to have happened. And that's very much an idea from Nietzsche, of the eternal return. And it's one that keeps coming up, and it's confirmed rather than undermined by science in terms of the way that we think things work at the subatomic level and at the galactic scale. Our conception of time is very much not borne out by the evidence, as I understand it.
Just to bring Joe in, Joe, what with regards to time, what is the yoga type of definition of time?
Well, I mean, like there's lots of different theories and lots of different kind of people that have a kind of different perspectives on that. But it's the same. It kind of ties in with a lot of what we've been talking about that, just basically what Bram said. And I think a lot of what yoga's, a lot of yogi philosophy people are speaking about this idea of that's where we get ourselves into trouble, is trying to position ourselves in time and trying to manipulate time and trying to change things or trying, so it's that, I suppose it's quite a common thing that people will say in relation to anxiety and depression and things, is that if you're trying to bring yourself into the moment and just kind of take it, I suppose, a step at a time, a moment at a time, because that's the only place that you're real and that's the only place you can affect. And if you spend too much time focusing on or dwelling on the past or thinking about that, that's what causes depression. If you spend too much time in the future, constantly, over planning and kind of stressing yourself out about what's to come, that's what causes anxiety. So that's really simplistic, and again, there's many more layers to that.
I suppose it's also, sorry.
That's something that kind of comes up again and again within kind of yogic philosophy, is this idea that, being in the moment, being kind of contented, not necessarily contented as in just like, so, well, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing because I'm contented, but being okay, trying to be okay with where you are and kind of moving from that position rather than this kind of striving, grabbing kind of way that we are in the West, especially, but the whole world really is, and potentially it's kind of something to do with our human nature, is it? I don't know, but at least it's the idea is to challenge that and to be thinking about where you are all the time. And I think that if anyone's read the Eckhart Tolle book, Power of Now, it's quite like a popular kind of book that I think is quite good at kind of almost like, not simplifying, I don't mean it in a patronising way, but I think he says it quite clearly, a lot of those kind of theories and concepts about being in the now. And I think his example he gives, which I think is, he talks about like a kind of light bulb moment when he was feeling kind of suicidal, and he talks about how he was like, I just hate myself, and then he was like, had this concept of, well, who am I talking about? Am I like, so I don't like myself, so then is there two of me, or like what? And it just kind of started his mind down this path, and then he went and kind of read loads of kind of Eastern philosophy and kind of ancient philosophy, and developed this kind of theory, which really is talking about that kind of thing. So I just started there, but
it's a really good, it's a great read, or there's an audio book. It was an audio book I listened to for maybe people who are going through a tough time, just because it does kind of explain things maybe in a language that just some people react to very well. I know I've recommended to friends who really enjoyed it as well, and they went, that kind of sort of
the audiobook. He's got a lovely relaxed voice as well, so I think that audiobook is one I'd recommend definitely.
The bell gets a bit annoying after a while because it's that thing. It's a bit too much.
I was listening to my headphones and it's like pure give me tinnitus.
A Nobel Prize, a Nobel version. I've got some comments coming in. This is interesting stuff. Says Alan, with lockdown, it feels like time is often just standing still. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think it's just quite weird because, like, in a lot of ways, we keep on making the joke, that was this year's dragged in because it's for many people it's felt like it's dragged in. But then also you're just like, wow, that we're looking at your Facebook memories comes up, and it was like a year ago we were playing a gig and we just released Fetching Pitchfork the single, and you're like, sometimes you're like, that seems ages ago. Another party going, that was actually just like, yes, it just feels like last week. And I think that it's just a really confusing time we're in, because I think it's because you take away that planning. So if you're in events, if you're in a, there's lots of other ones, but just from my experience of being in events or being in bands or anything, you've usually got to plan ahead. You've got to plan your gigs in advance, and then you've got to plan your rehearsal space, rooms, and it's always planning. So without the plans, and people plan to go on a holiday, they plan to go birthday parties, there's just so much stuff. As life is about planning things, and now there is no plans. And I think that when you take away such a crucial part of our personalities and our lifestyles, that time does almost feel that time has stopped in a way.
I'll tell you what though, what Joe was saying about living in the moment, I've kind of tried to take this whole great pause thing as an opportunity to really try and focus on that. And I'm not saying it's always been successful, but I mean, I don't know, like Joe, probably if you're already into yoga, maybe you meditate already. And there was an interesting point where I think I was meditating wrong for a couple of years. I was saying this actually to Peter Sass, who is the first guest on my podcast, Strange Exiles, this month. I felt like I was meditating wrong, because for me, I was in a bad place, and meditating at my lunch break was a 20-minute escape. It was like I could get out of my body, out of my brain. But after I've been meditating for a while, I realized that actually what meditation was really good at was placing me in my body, was placing me in my brain, and not being anxious about the past or the future, but being in the now. And I've tried to now do as many things that make me feel like that as possible, and it has helped on my journey to be a more stable, well person. So I think meditation is one of those things that maybe some people have a misapprehension about, like it's making the world go away. I think it's more about being okay in yourself. Maybe yoga's the same, Joe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think. Oh, yeah, I think in yoga is the whole like when we in the West talk about yoga, we're talking about asana, which is one little bit of what yoga is about. The wider so the point of asana, really, if you're looking at yoga as a whole, is actually so that you're preparing your body so you can meditate for longer and be better at meditating, basically. Not be better, because again, that's like, what is that? Be a good meditator? It doesn't exist. But so that's the whole point of the kind of movement aspect of it, is to be able to kind of train your body and kind of focus your mind so that then you can meditate better. Equally though, a kind of moving, I think asana is like a moving meditation sometimes as well. So you are kind of putting yourself in a meditative state if you're doing like a yoga class, but also that kind of meditation bit's really important as well. And like I say, it's actually the point. And you're totally right. I think a lot of people kind of get unsure about what meditation is and think it's about relaxing is one of the things, which is it is, and it can be relaxing, but it's not. Like, you're not trying to relax when you're meditating. It's like you're trying to go inside, and you're trying to be in the moment and just be, as the best way to describe it, rather than kind of, you're like not blanking out. Outside is still there. Internally, everything is still there. Your heart's still beating, your lungs are still moving, but your mind is kind of honing down onto just.
It's almost like that version of zooming out kind of thing. Like, I know that a lot of people saying, like, because usually when we say things like we're having a bad day, usually what's actually happened is you've something bad or inconvenient started at the start of your day, and then you end up spending the rest of your day, noticing little things that are annoying or bad. And usually people always sort of get angry or usually lose it over the littlest of things, because maybe lots of bad stuff has been building up. So one thing that I've heard a lot of people saying is that it's all about zooming out. So zoom yourself out of the situation. Can you talk a little bit about that, Joe? Is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that's, is that part of meditation? I suppose it is. It's like taking yourself, do you mean like taking a step back kind of thing?
Yeah, and zooming out.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, that would be a way to, like, these are all kind of, a lot of the things that we think of, again, as meditation is actually like practices that will bring you closer to, well, samadhi or nirvana, or, I suppose our versions like heaven, but it doesn't really mean that. It's kind of this blissful state love and well-being. This is what kind of within a lot of kind of cultures, when people are meditating or praying or whatever, this is what they're kind of aiming towards and are living their life by these whatever guidelines they're living their life by to reach this state of samadhi, which is like kind of like blissful state. But if you're talking about zooming out, that's one way to train yourself to meditate so that you can reach this blissful state, if you know what I mean. So like you might do some exercises, you might do maybe just like counting in your head to counting your breaths, or focusing on the feeling of your breath in and out your nose, focusing on your stomach coming in and out, and that's it. But again, it's not about not being allowed to think about other stuff, but it's about just kind of letting that stuff go by and just focusing in. But that's not kind of, it is meditation, but it's techniques to bring you to the state of this kind of state of blissfulness, which a lot of people will have potentially experienced something like that when they've taken psychedelic drugs, or if you're a meditator, you may have had, well, if you're very good at meditation, then you may have had big experiences with it. I've had little glimpses of it, but also another way where I feel like I've had a little glimpses of that feeling is, if you're in nature, like if you're in the trees and you're on your own and you're just breathing and you just kind of have that feeling of. Another one as well is if you're a musician or a writer, or you're just doing something you love, like you're passionate about, and you just kind of lose yourself in this kind of joyful feeling. Usually it just lasts for a few seconds or whatever, but that's kind of like examples of maybe where you're trying to get to with meditation. So zooming out would be one way to start beginning to train yourself to move towards that.
Well, just on that point you were saying about the training your brain to, like from psychedelics. I know, Chris, you had a recent experience that sort of maybe touches on that point.
Yeah, there's a Hunter S. Thompson quote which goes, "I've never understood the notion espoused often by former drug users that you can get a lot higher without drugs than with them." And I never understood that either until pretty recently when I started. Lockdown has my meditations come on leaps and bounds during lockdown, because obviously there's not enough hours in the day for me. My to-read list is about 160 books. I'm like, I want to just freeze time and get all this shit done and then get on with my life, because you spend like a third of your life in bed and then another third of your life shitting and eating and all this stupid stuff when you could be like, meditating. And right, so psychedelics, I think I do have an advantage. Like, I have tripped a lot meditating recently, and I think the advantage I have is that I've done a lot of fucking psychedelics. Like every week for 8 months, I did a psychedelic, and I did a lot more on top. And I think what that does is it just we've all got cannabinoid receptors, and we all have DMT and psychedelics within us. And if you can control your body in such a way that you have complete mastery of every aspect of it, which is really, you're talking about zooming out. Well, it's really about zooming in. Like there's macro and micro, there is no difference. They're both the same thing. Like I said earlier, there's as much out there as there is in here. And there is legends of yogic masters who can zoom so far in that they can see DNA and bacteria. And it explains as well, they reckon that that's how Egyptians and people like that knew about stuff that required microscopes and telescopes. Like the Egyptians knew that Sirius was a twin star, and we only found that out recently. And they also knew Pluto was there, and we didn't know Pluto was there till the 30s. And so there was legends of proper yogic masters who have spent 30 years in a cave kind of shit, can zoom out because they appreciate fully and truly understand that there is no difference between the other end of the universe and what's inside them. The blood that flows through your veins is the veins of the cosmos. And so I have been achieving, if I blindfold myself and put headphones on and listen to trippy music and go into a deep meditative trance, sometimes I can achieve very, very, very strong trips. It's different from when you actually take drugs because you've got more control. Like you just need to open your eyes and stand up and it's gone. You can't really do that when you're on psychedelics. But there's definitely, I've been reading a lot about yoga recently, and I've been reading Sadhguru's book. And the conclusion I came to was that yoga is really all about the psychedelic experience, but it's about finding the psychedelic experience without using psychedelics, just finding it naturally within yourself. And a lot of the stuff Sadhguru says, like I've cheated. If meditation's a video game, right, and you unlock skill levels, I've entered the cheat code, which is psychedelics, and just jumped up a few levels, like well, I shouldn't really be at what might take 10 years setting up a tree to achieve or whatever. So it's definitely a cheat code, but it's really not a good, it's better to do it naturally, obviously, and it is achievable through dedication. I've done it. I'm living proof.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Sadhguru, I was watching some interesting people. There's people that saying that he's a fraud. Is Sadhguru a fraud?
I mean, I think anyone positioning themselves as a kind of guru, kind of in a position like that, making quite a lot of money, doing, having a lot of people putting a lot of trust and faith in them, needs to be questioned. So, I mean, I think he's really interesting. His book's great. I know the book you're talking about, Chris. I've listened to the audiobook of that. It's great. I think it's not accessible. It's quite difficult to get your head around some of it, but he's quite like, he's like a bit of a rock star yogi, isn't he? He's kind of like cutting about on his motorbike and telling kind of stories from that perspective. So he's quite cool, and I think a lot of what he says is pretty good. But then there is again those stories saying that he's ripping people off and all that kind of like the guy is it Ozo, is that how you pronounce it? Ojo, that was there's the Netflix Osho about there's the Netflix documentary about him, like Wild is it Wild Country or something?
Wild Country, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so,
you need to watch that.
He is so charismatic, and his stuff he talks about and writes about, if you listen to his interviews or read his stuff, it's great. It's really good. And his institute still exists in India, and but he was at it, you know what I mean? So it's just...
Well, I suppose I think something happens when there's that power dynamic like that. It just, because basically people start treating him like a god, and he's talking about, religious healing and stuff like that. So something sort of happens there.
You've got people in quite a vulnerable position. And there was an interesting interview I watched between Rodney Yee, who's like a kind of, he's a yoga teacher, he's quite good, and Sally Kempton, who's kind of like a meditation, I hate to say expert, but she's like, knows her stuff. And they were talking about this idea of like wanting to jump down the rabbit hole and wanting to just completely give yourself to this kind of concept of what's going on and just take it all in. But then there is this thing that when people are in that state or that position of kind of wanting to surrender themselves and wanting to just open their heart up, then it leaves it open for for sketchy people to come along and do damage. So I suppose it's always going to be a risk, isn't it?
And I think that's why maybe there is such there's people who are skeptical of any ideas that are just slightly out with the norm, because there is sort of con men out there who just take advantage of their positions and stuff like that. I mean, where do you? Because I know that Bram, you're quite sort of somewhere. You're quite good in the way that you are open-minded to certain people, but you would be very skeptical of some of the chat out there online.
Well, I think it's about where you draw the line between the, I think we're talking about there's the cult of personality that develops around something. And in a way, it brings us back by a roundabout way to that Douglas Adams joke about the guy who hates you writing your horoscope. You can't discount the technology just because somebody's manipulated it. Whether yoga and meditation are generally beneficial technologies, let's call them that, they're subject to the manipulation of powerful personalities and ego cults, and that's the story of human history right there. But I mean, the interesting thing for me is that what Joe was describing with that flow state that musicians get into, they actually, there's plenty of neuroscientific evidence for that now. And in fact, you can see surgeries where somebody's operating on someone's brain and they're getting them to play the piano or play the violin so that they avoid the areas of the brain that are activating when they're in that flow state. And then the person can survive the surgery and still play. And similarly, you know, Chris was talking about the history of using psychedelics almost as a shortcut to those flow states or those. It's like, to me, it's a thing of, because I've done my fair share of psychedelics too, and for me, it's about connectedness. When you take magic mushrooms, particularly if you do it, you know, like in quite a ritual way with friends in a natural environment, you can feel like, you know, there is no difference between you, the sky, the tree, the plants, the river. And unfortunately, all the research on that was largely stopped and kiboshed in the 1960s in the wake of the panic about LSD. And that's starting to change now. You've got research grants. I think recently some areas, some states in America have decriminalized magic mushrooms for personal use too. They're being used widely. Microdosing is a huge phenomenon where people take them, you know, for their mental health. I actually tried that, and it didn't work for the particular set of circumstances that I'm in. But I think it's amazing that people can try that now in a, you know, semi-legal way, and that seems to be changing. So who knows what we will find out about the psychedelic experience in terms of the ways that that might describe our reality. I think, you know, you, as much as you can read something like Terence McKenna and get lost in some of the, you know, wild conclusions that he jumps to, it's still a fascinating document of somebody who went out there into an area that does deserve to be researched and brought back his findings, you know. And in a similar way, like with journalism, like just because somebody's got out there and got compromised and come back with opinions, it's not objective journalism. It's still a report, you know. So I'm never.
Is that part of that
I'm never
about
skeptical? You know, I will read anyone's account. I always take into account where their subjectivity comes from, and I think that's the same is true of science, which is like driven by big pharma, by weapons research, by the want to get into space and mine asteroids, and, you know, essentially like bring about an end to scarcity. There's so many interests at play, and all of those things on an ideological level shape what conclusions are drawn. And that's one reason that magic is so still occult, so hidden, is that idea of like the magical thinking about the connectedness of things and the possibility that you might be able to discover things by exploring that is still very not mainstream knowledge. It's still, you know, oh, okay, Mystic Meg. That's the first thing people reach for. But, you know, Mystic Meg just wants to make a buck for the sun. That's her motivation for making that shit up, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the sun. You know what I mean? Someone's going to get involved and see that as a great way to do it. Is that good? But just focusing on the psychedelics for a second. Is a big part of this maybe just about being humbled, your ego being humbled? And sorry, I'm going to have to mute Joe. I'm also going to. I think you're in the same WhatsApp group that's going off.
I did just.
Yeah, just because I hear a double beep, so we're just going to mute that.
I don't know where my phone is. Did you hear mine? Or just
that's all right. It's fine.
Tell me if it's
but just sort of like the humbling of the ego. So maybe that does teach us that just all these lessons that keep on coming up again and again, and that, you know, not to worry that you are part of something bigger, to enjoy the moment, and various things like that. They seem to become very prevalent on psychedelics.
Yes, and I think, like, you know, we have a view of ourselves informed by this kind of Cartesian idea of like us being thinking creatures, by the scientific idea of us being like above the animal kingdom. And drugs can be a shortcut to realizing that you are just, you know, on some level like animal impulses, that you are just a part of nature, that on an atomic level, you're no different from a chair or a table. Like, I think that's one way to understand psychedelic experiences is as the revelation, like the pulling back of the curtain of the real, to show you the universe as it might look if you weren't a human. What that's for, how it got there. Maybe Chris has got some ideas about that. But I think the psychedelic experience is super central to human history as well. And I don't just mean, you know, magic mushrooms or ayahuasca or things used by native cultures, because I think there's recently some evidence that those practices actually don't go back as far as we think necessarily. I think there's conflicting opinions on that. But what I'm saying is that, like, the idea of getting out of your head is almost like one of the first human impulses. Like, what do toddlers do to get out their heads? They spin round and round, you know, almost as soon as a toddler can walk, that's what they want to do. They want to get dizzy, get out their heads. So there's that, you know, there's that. I think, you know, you can't discount alcohol. Loads of cultures used alcohol in ceremonial fashions. For me, I had an experience with addiction that means that I'm like really fear of everything psychedelic right now. Like, you know, I would have been the once a year clean your head out magic mushroom trip guy at the very least. But I haven't fucked with it in a while, man. Like, I don't know, it's no-go territory for me right now. So,
Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
I was just going to say quickly, just on that kind of the point of what you were saying, Chris, earlier, and in relation to what you just said, Bram, as well, is that like I don't know if you've read much Ram Dass, but he's like an example of somebody that was like, he was in with kind of Timothy Leary and all that, with that kind of first bit of research and kind of psychonaut kind of stuff that went on in the 60s, and then he went the opposite way, and he's dead now, but he did in the end of his life, he was still very much following that path, but through meditation and stuff rather than psychedelics, and he talks quite a lot about it. So it's quite interesting if you're feeling like that you can't really go there with trips or that, but you want to maybe kind of explore that. He's quite interesting about how he's kind of approached that, because I think the way he talks about it is, if you take a drug, it's like you just get to like peek over the wall a little bit, and then you've got to like fall all the way back down to the bottom again, and then that's you. But with like practice meditation and stuff, that you eventually can kind of, well, I don't think he suggests you can jump over the wall, but you know, you're like you can spend longer times, and it's like more you're more in control and all this kind of stuff. So he's really interesting actually to read about in relation to that. So yeah, that was all I wanted to just jump in with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ram Dass is like the happy path. Like, if you can do it that way, that's brilliant.
Yeah,
but I totally understand
know
why people take shortcuts, and you know,
absolutely.
like we're all weak. We all want to get out of our heads, you know.
Yeah.
We've got comments coming in. We've got Tam the Van says, working next to an old church organ piped up and congregation broke into song come lunchtime. Church was derelict and unused. Psychic research told me it was a time slip. Wow. Diamond says, can we talk about how banging that lineup is behind?
I think it's that one he's talking
about. Is that one? Yeah, it's that one. Stanley Odd.
That one.
Eaters, more famous.
Boom Booms, Baba Brinkman,
Disraeli,
Chemical Poets,
Eaters,
more famous, and Church When the Shit Hits the Fan.
Wow.
Who are kind of like a great
texture.
lost band of Scottish electro technical rap.
Brilliant stuff. Shelton Mills says, focus on the good old breath for sure. Darth Vader in the motherfucking house. Sorry for my spelling. Yeah, Mel, you were brilliant. I think you were worried about running out of breath, but Mel did a show on Saturday night, and she was dancing and doing poetry at the same time, and you know, she was out of breath after it, but I think she did really well to keep it going, you know, in the meantime, because dancing's hard and poetry's hard. Just to sort of try and do them live at the same time is incredible. We've got a comment from Sharon. Has got the love hearts. He says, "Oh, Chris in love hearts." Tam Adams says, "Most stuff I get is symbolic, hard work, but enjoyable to work with." And I suppose that's it. And it's the you get that little glimpse into something, and you feel like it's really important, that you will remember it, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
There's different levels of a psychedelic experience, isn't there, in regards to what Bram was saying? There's a microdosing, which is where you don't trip, but you benefit in that it alleviates your stress or anxiety or depression or whatever. Then there's like 3 grams, which is like, fucking hell, look at all these cool, pretty colors, man. This is fucking amazing. Then there's 5 grams, which is like, boot your ass into another dimension and maybe sort of get a small appreciation of how connected you are to every atom in the universe. And then you can go up to like 10, 20, 30. And when you're up at like 20 to 30 grams, you're Really what you're doing is you're dissolving all these boundaries that are in place. All these, the three-dimensional reality that is formed by your brain is completely stripped away, and the consciousness that is you, that is infinite, is what you feel yourself as. And so I don't know if Bram smoked DMT as well, because that's the levels of mushrooms. Then you've got like super strong salvia extract, which I think puts you in another dimension for sure, but that's debatable. And then there's DMT, which I don't think it's even debatable. If you smoke that shit, you're in another fucking dimension. And I can see how people might have that no matter what, it's somehow being projected by your brain, particularly your brain on drugs. But many scientists have spoke with otherworld entities on DMT and learned things that they never knew. And many scientists have used this, and especially, as I'm sure Bram will know a lot about, like Newton and all his occult practices and how they communed with the spirit world, and alchemy. I think alchemy is really about getting into such a deep meditative trance that you can manipulate the chemicals in your body. And I think that's the philosopher's stone, is actually making yourself trip naturally through your own willpower and brain. But yeah, psychedelics is about bursting out of three-dimensional reality. And if you take a big, strong fucking... that's why people are scared to take strong doses, because, you can't die, so you're not scared of dying. You can't really get hurt. You're just scared to fucking meet yourself or be like this infinite consciousness. It's scary, but it's beautiful as well. But it happens on meditation too. But like I say, you can stop that. Once you're on a psychedelic trip, you're locked in. You got to be brave.
And what advice would you give to anyone who's maybe trying that out for the first time?
Go slowly.
Well, do your research for sure. Know exactly what you're taking. Know exactly how much you're taking. The classic mistake I think everyone made was taking some and then not thinking that they were tripping and then taking more. Avoid all those schoolboy errors. Just do heavy research, and preferably with people who know what they're doing. But if not, just make sure you know what you're doing, and just always remember you can't die. And meditation's a good skill to have, because if you can master meditation before you start using psychedelics, then you can actually use that as a tool. See, the real thing here is when you connect psychedelics with the power of meditation, which is sort of what I've been doing the past couple of years, and that's the really fucking powerful shit, man. That's insane. It's changed my life in many ways. But go ahead.
Yeah, they've got a few comments coming in here. Pilliston Project said nature is not mute, it's trying to communicate with us. This is not a metaphor, says McKenna.
Yes.
Yeah.
3-year-old whirling dervishes, says Paul. Sky says, hi, Lee hijacking Sky's account. We didn't miss this chat. And so what about, let's just to bring it back to the sort of the solstice. So obviously, the good news is for anyone tuned in, it's just maybe feeling a bit fucking down with the winter, that sort of seasonal affective disorder vibe. Then this is the last day of it getting dark. This is the first day of it getting lighter again. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the longest.
So the Knicks are fair not drawn in. The Knicks are fair going to reverse the drawing. They're not going to be drawn in. They won't be drawn in anymore. They won't be drawn into your shite anymore, says the Knicks. And solstice is equinox. So can we talk a little bit about the solstice and the equinox, Chris or Joe? Do you want to do that one?
No, go for it, Chris. It's cool.
I can tie the psychedelic chat to the equinox, because I do believe that psychedelics very much have the power to take us into an age of enlightenment, into a golden age, whether you're microdosing or whether you're fucking meeting God, right? And it has happened before in the 60s when they were all taking, the LSD was better back then, and you got a better trip off it that was more like the natural trips you get. And that changed all these counterculture revolutions. You know, sexism, we didn't abolish it, but we made huge steps against it. Racism, we made huge steps against. Might feel like we went back a few steps recently, but there was enormous progress made in the 60s, and you can directly attribute that to psychedelics and all this amazing music, all this amazing art. So what I'm saying is psychedelics do have the power to cause a great worldwide renaissance. And as Bram was saying earlier, it's becoming more acceptable now. Mushrooms are being decriminalized. DMT's now being used in clinical trials in the UK. And I do see that as sort of a positive, because we're at a precipice. There's a singularity coming, AI. An asteroid might hit us. Volcanoes are probably going to explode. There's a pandemic. It's like we're nearly getting wiped out from every possible angle. But I think the psychedelics can definitely pull us through all that. Well,
what way do you mean that the psychedelics are going to pull us back from that, from being wiped out? You're saying that the psychedelics could save the day?
Just to tie it in with the new age blossoming, and because it's becoming more decriminalized, and making a comparison to the 60s and all the advantagements, that were done in the 60s, you know, it could happen again, just through a revolution through DMT, or even just through, if we're all being prescribed more natural things to treat our depressions and our anxieties and our stresses, because we're in a weird position where we're actually in a better position than any generation that's ever lived before, and yet we're the most, you know, fucked up in the head and fucked up, and that's where yoga comes in as well a lot. Yoga's all about finding balance between the 5 bodies, isn't it? Maybe Joe could tell you about the 5 bodies and how we live in one, and we focus too much on the one body that's grounded here, and we neglect all these other aspects of our overall character.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like kind of the esoteric body. Yeah, I mean, like, again, some people have different views on kind of how much they're into that kind of thing. But I suppose that kind of ties in. So I'm not an expert, but I think it's like 5 different kind of layers that kind of traditionally talk about. But then there's people think there's again different opinions on how many layers of the esoteric body is, but it starts off kind of internally, and then kind of more to it's to do with your spirit, your soul, or whatever is, I suppose, how we would talk about it. But it's kind of starting off internally. Your first layer is kind of more being related to the physical body, and as they progress out, they become more about kind of that connection with the universe, or the divine, or God, or whatever you want to call it. But it's also kind of that ties in with the chakras as well. The chakras are kind of tied in with the esoteric body, and again, it goes from like your root chakra down at the kind of base of your spine, like all the way up your body to your crown chakra, which is the one. So your root chakra is more connected to matter, and you know, like the physical world that we experience and your physical body, and then it kind of progresses slowly to your crown chakra, which is your kind of connection to the wider universe. I suppose that's the theory, or what. But again, there's actually the people talk about like the 7 chakras, or the 10 chakras, or the 15 chakras. Actually, there's people talk about like there being hundreds of them all over your body. So it's like lots of people have got different theories. Kind of ties in with Chinese medicine and acupressure points and things as well. There's kind of links between the, you know, Indian philosophy and Chinese kind of philosophy and medicine go back and forward, because obviously they're quite close, and a lot of kind of ideological stuff went back and forward from between the two. So yeah, I can't remember how I got into that. What was the question?
Well, no, it's just, that's the whole point of today, though. It's just to kind of throw questions are linear in this episode. Questions are not linear. There is no linear questions.
Never linear. It's like, what? Yeah. Off on tangents.
Yeah, I know. I'm feeling well. Yeah, so I think just it was quite interesting. I thought what would be quite interesting to talk about is the fact that Chinese and Indian theory, well, all theories, the amount of the relationship between people who were from different parts of the world, and obviously before we had the transport that we do now, and really interesting to reading about things like cave paintings that existed with similar art. Then there's no way that these people, you know, like
collective consciousness or something.
Yeah, the collective consciousness. Let's get it. You guys get the collective consciousness, or aliens. Or of course. And the third way, of course, is the long forgotten technology, which is something we touched upon before on the show. So I don't know if somebody wants to start with that one.
I mean, think, you know, the thing about human civilization and culture and our knowledge of it is that it's patchy at best. You know, we can say certain things for sure, but we have this tendency in every age to look at things and see it through the lens of that age, you know. And we're now talking about like a scientific age rather than a kind of astrological age. So you tend to discount evidence that doesn't fit the picture, you know. But it is amazing that we just do keep pushing back the dates when things occurred, the dates when things were used, the dates when things were invented or built. We do keep pushing those back further and further into deep time. And, you know, I just, that's my level of like curiosity, but also skepticism about it, is that science has never been about exactness or progress, really. You just have theories and then you test them and they're replaced by other theories. And sometimes those theories are wildly different from the ones that came before. So you can't discount those paradigm shifts. Those are the things that drive an age in a way. I mean, and even me saying that is the perspective of somebody who grew up in an age driven by technological shifts. So, of course, that's how I perceive history. You know, we talk about the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. Chris mentioned all these things earlier. These are all ways of defining things by what technology was available. So, you know, as people born of an education system invented in the 1800s in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, of course, that's the way you think. I think on the last show we were talking about the kingdom next to Egypt, which, you know, was largely forgotten by history because they discounted it. They said that any pyramids built in that area would have been a pale imitation of Egyptian pyramids, but that society actually kind of predated the Egyptians and outlasted Rome. So we're constantly discovering that chapters of our history were wrong, and that's another thing back to the idea of time and different perceptions of it and how it's measured and how we might misunderstand those things over the years. But the Indians, the Indian religions, Hinduism in particular, and the Egyptians themselves actually put their timeline like way further back than archaeology or you know, carbon dating of things can prove. Like there was a story in the news recently that they found a small piece of rope from the Great Pyramids, and the reason that was so valuable is that they can carbon date rope. It's much harder to do that for rock, for, you know, big stone structures. So if the Egyptians believe that their lineage extended 10,000 years back into deep time from where they stood, if you know, Cicero was talking about the Chaldeans and their legacy of astronomy going back 10,000 years, the only evidence that we have to argue against it is like scientific proof. Like we analyzed it in the lab and the lab says no. So that would be my position on all of these things. My question is, well, what's the useful technology that we can take from this stuff? What's the useful symbols that we can take from Egyptian myth, the useful stories? And that's always been the case. Like if you look at the way that Egyptian tales and Sumerian tales influenced you know, Christianity, Greek mythology. It's a continuing story of appropriation and reinvention and refinement that actually leads to science. It's, you know, there's a misconception that science kind of refutes all spirituality and religion. It doesn't. It evolved from it. Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, well, definitely. With sacred geometry, it's all aligned to the constellations. And like we were saying before about how the energies of the stars and the planets affect the way life operates down here. Like Bram's saying, it's all very egocentric. It's only from the perspective of that time, and we can only make guesses. It's interesting to note, I wrote it down here somewhere, that, right, in the last 150,000 years, there have been 16 civilization-ending size catastrophes. So in the last span of modern human, like humans that we would recognize today, there's been 16 catastrophes that were bad enough to completely wipe out any civilization that may have existed there. So how can we honestly say that there's just, we don't know, it's just a big lacuna in our knowledge. And fossils, I mean, you only find a very, very small fraction of fossils, and only a very small fraction of things that actually died in a position to leave a fossil. There's meant to be like 99.9% of everything that ever lived we don't actually have a fossil for. So my point is, how do we know how many times this has happened again and again and again and just been smashed back down into the dust? It could have went on for absolute eternity. It's very kind of ignorant and naive to think that we're somehow the pinnacle of existence and that it's never peaked before, when we're constantly being... Yeah,
it's interesting you're saying that, Chris, because what we were speaking about with Bram texture on the show previously was we were talking about the pyramids and stuff like that, and Bram sort of after investigating more, sort of started discounting aliens and slavery and got to the point that it was like it was maybe a hidden technology of some sort, and obviously we just assume that is not possible. How could they have done that technology in that time? But it is possible, isn't it?
I mean, I think again, it's this sense of historical, anthropomorphism, us trying to imagine ourselves back. And it probably doesn't help that we make movies about this stuff, where Christian Bale is suddenly in the middle of fucking ancient Egypt. We've constantly told stories about that, but usually from a very white colonial perspective. And this colors our understanding of new discoveries about that era. The idea that we fully understand what the pyramids were for and how they were built is kind of laughable. And this, I think, goes back to what Joe was saying about charismatic leaders in a way, is that the scientists that you want to listen to are not the ones who say we have a complete picture of this and anyone who, challenges it is wrong. That's a very messianic view of science. It's probably the one that business would like to promote as well, because when they have a new discovery, they want to say this new discovery is a game changer. It changes everything. The vaccine completely makes you virus proof. Usually the truth's a little more complicated than that. You don't find it out till 20 years later. So people are right to be skeptical of anything that has a claim to absolute truth. And I think that applies as much to ancient history as it does to the latest technological developments. Who knows what they were doing with the pyramids? I think it's impossible to say, other than to say that it had something to do with, like Chris said, alignment with the cosmos, which was tremendously important to their understanding of the world and how it worked and how they could predict things. To say it had something to do with funerary rites, which is kind of the orthodox, accepted thing. There's a lot of evidence to the contrary of that. There were no remains found in the Great Pyramid. To say that we were only just starting to understand the way that it would have reflected light, how it might have looked to Egyptians. To say that we're just starting to understand what the chambers inside might be capable of if they were flooded with water, and what current that might produce in the chambers. I mean, we just don't understand it at the moment. So that's what I'm wary of, is any explanation, whether it's aliens or, it was definitely a massive pyramid tomb. Both of those to me are equally open to question,
Yeah, because I suppose that I think we were talking before on this show about the amount of effort it would have taken to move the pyramids, that it's almost just as unlikely as there was. Because I suppose it's hard for us to get our head around the fact that if we have been wiped out completely and wiped out with them, that would also have wiped out the wisdom of our elders. That would also have wiped out the plans and the process. And also there's lots of
a really good
documents and knowledge that's been deliberately wiped out.
There's a thing I was going to mention, man. Sorry to interrupt. This is amazing. Can't remember where it is, but you'll probably find it from my description on the internet. And it's a description of the timeline of how long it would take for our civilization to functionally disappear. And I'm talking all the buildings, all the infrastructure, or everything but the bare outlines of the biggest roads. And the timeline for that is shorter than you think. It's a couple of 100 years. And that's what Chris was talking about the space between civilizations and the times that have risen and fallen, and the great civilization ending events that have happened on the micro and the macro scale. It would have been, if there was a technologically advanced civilization before us, the idea that every trace of it was wiped from the face of the planet is actually like way more plausible than you would think, scientifically speaking.
Yeah, you just got to look at during lockdown, like parts of the city were already starting to overgrow just because it hadn't been maintained for fucking 3 months.
The animals come back.
Yeah, totally. It all just grows back over, for sure. And solar flares, like this ties in with about how the stars affect us, right? Solar flares can wipe out every single microchip on this planet. And that's just an emission from the sun. So obviously that's going to affect life on the planet because it's going to plunge us in absolute fucking chaos. You know, we'll be lucky if we don't wipe ourselves out during the next solar flare. So there's an example of a star, you know, directly affecting a planet. And I think one thing that we can say for certain, 90% about the Egyptians is, well, as you say, like it is all guesswork. But to me, it's very much aligned with the Orion's belt is actually Orion's penis. There's a fact of the day for everyone. We changed it to belt because we thought penis was too crude, but obviously all the ancient civilizations were obsessed with big erect stoners. So it was Orion's erection. And they've built the pyramids as a mirror image of that, and the Sphinx as a mirror image of Leo. It seems to...
Saving Orion's privates.
Yeah, Orion's cock is... actually his belt is actually his cock. Well, it was originally, they changed it, but I think like it's hard to say that that's a coincidence because it's just so perfectly aligned. But I mean, we know anyway that they were obsessed with the stars, and we kind of view it as if they were obsessed with the stars in a sort of primitive way, but that's total nonsense because they were actually very, very advanced understanding of astronomy, as advanced as today, maybe arguably. It's arguable.
Yeah, it's I think there's something with the psychedelics and looking at the stars. It seems a very natural thing to do, and it feels like an important thing to do as well.
Well,
what we're going to do just now is
like, looking at the stars is time travel because all those stars, some of them are dead, some of them are burned out, some of them are, that light could be reaching you from all. I like to do that, man. Like I like to just get fucking high and like lie on the grass. I live a little bit outside the city, so you can see the curve of the Milky Way sometimes. And you just think, like, we have this illusion that we're separate from the world, separate from the earth, separate from other people, separated by borders, separated by walls. Like none of that's real, dude. Like we're just tiny little points in time, and you can lie on your back in the stars high as a motherfucker and key into that without any scientific knowledge or even like practice of enlightenment like meditation or yoga. That's available to everybody. Just like have a fucking whiskey, smoke a joint, or don't, you know, just go lie on your back in the grass, spin around a couple of times maybe.
Yeah, I don't think you even need a joint, do you? I mean, I've been out in the wilderness, and when you're actually under the Milky Way and you look up and you're sober, like it almost brings tears to you. I've got what do you call it, vertigo from looking up at the Milky Way, because it gives you such a rich concept of the fact that you're just surfing a fucking rock through the cosmos. And the body is like an antenna as well, to also relate to the stars affecting us thing. If you turn it one way, it's tuned to one frequency, and you turn it another way. Like if you turn an antenna, you've got the whole world coming in there. But if you turn it the wrong way, you've got no picture. So it's all about just sort of tuning your antenna.
And if anyone's got obviously light pollution, because of where I am, and because I don't have a garden, I won't be able to lie on my back tonight and enjoy the great conjuncture that is apparently happening just now. But if anyone does have that ability, then please do take a picture of if your camera can do that. I suppose it's a decent camera for that. But yeah, let us know if you can see the great conjuncture happening in the world. In the sky right now between Saturn and Jupiter. Going to have a quick 2-second break. Well, it's not really a break. I'm going to announce what's happening this week on You Call That Radio TV. A few of you thought we're going to take a little break after Capture Works, but far from it. It's a busy week. You call that radio. More like a TV show. On almost every night. It's gonna be streaming live.
special. On almost every night, every night, every night. It's gonna be streaming live, streaming live, streaming live. You call live
If you don't really know what's going on, there's a show that also doesn't know what's going on. Call that radio TV. You call that radio. Call that radio TV. You call that radio TV.
Yes. And we're back. Joe, you're late. You're late. Okay. So, yeah, there was we've got a special guest. Has turned up as well. Good stuff. So we've got a special guest about to join us. So, yeah, just that's for what's happening this week, just to kind of go over that briefly. Tomorrow night, we've got Colonel Mustard Christmas special. So Colonel Mustard and Dijon 5 will be in the house. We have Max Thompson on the 23rd, which is a guy from Scotland who moved to Canada and he's now doing very well as an MC over there. He's a hip hop artist, beat maker, rapper, amazing. So we're going to be talking about his journey from Scotland to Canada. And then I think, I don't know, is anything on Christmas Day? There's rumours that Frank Foodie might do a Christmas message to clash with the Queen, just to take some ratings off the Queen. But that hasn't been confirmed. Frank's kind of went off the radar this year. I think he went down a rabbit hole himself. So he may or may not be here on Christmas Day with a message for the people. On Boxing Day, I just made this flyer while we were on the show tonight on the fly. So sorry if it's not the best flyer, but it's going to be a great day. We've got Roberta Pia, Deke Jackson and the Circus Fantasticus, Becky Wallace, Peter A. Kelly, Apocalyptic Theorists, Mima Moreau, John Boyle, and there is more. There is more that's been confirmed, but I can't announce yet as well. We're going to do that early because it's Boxing Day, and I think I might have a beer for that one. And yeah, 5 o'clock. Let's say 5 o'clock on Boxing Day, and and Christmas Eve we're doing the awards ceremony. So it's the awards ceremony. We did it last year when we were still an audio podcast. So it's going to be awards ceremony. We're going to be dishing out awards, and the way everyone else gets a list. Well, why can't we have a list? So we'll be giving it awards and lists on Christmas Eve, and I think that'll be a 5 o'clock kickoff as well, so that we can, have a drink early, because that's all that we really can do this year compared to normal Christmas times. We did have plans. We had plans to. We were looking forward to going somewhere, but cancelled like everything else. It's all cancelled. Now we're going to bring on. I'll catch up with the comments before we bring on our special guest. Let's see. Paul, psychedelics were a huge part of my 20s. Used to love taking LSD after clubbing to come down. Sat for 40 minutes, relaxed and transfixed, watching a fun fair in an ashtray. The mind is a strange thing. It is indeed. Biz Drum says, despite having learned Buddhist meditation, I was incapacitated with anxiety and depression. I took a microdose of around 10 mushies and I believe it put me back on track.
Yeah, if anyone's looking to microdose, I can definitely recommend U-Tree Apothecary. U-Tree Apothecary on Instagram. I know the guy that does the mushrooms and he's very much knows his shit. I trust him implicitly. So yeah, a wee shout out for that. If you're looking to microdose, I know a lot of people are. It's a good shout, especially if you've got anxiety or depression or anything like that.
But yeah, double check those doses. 10 does sound a little bit high for a microdose. So I think for some people that might be quite a lot. So just make sure, double check that stuff. Got yes, eternity, says Petra. And it is indeed. Sharon says, I'm going to get a lip piercing. Good on you, Sharon. Let us know how that goes. Hope your glasses arrived. I know you've been waiting on your glasses arriving. Tam says it'd be good to hear Psychic Dancehall by the fall. Yeah, Tam, it's probably going to be a it's just a copyright issue. Just now, I had copyright issues for Saturday as well, which is annoying. So I'm just going to not do that unless it's an actual band I know that doesn't have YouTube robot lawyers. Then I'm not going to play anything. The Pillow Stone Project says we possibly have our own version of the pyramids in the shape of Neolithic temples such as Kallanish or the Ring of Broga, which ultimately measured the movement of the sun and the moon. Solstice temples.
Yeah.
Bram worshipped the devil there once.
I was going to say that earlier about solstices, Mark. Is that like that's another thing that remains, like quite a kind of like vague trace within our collective memory. We know it's important. We're not quite sure why. We know that the stone circles were in some way associated with that. It's not like that knowledge is gone. It's just like the ghost of it haunts us. That's fascinating to me. That we know these places are important. That if someone tries to build a fucking motorway under one, we're gonna be objecting to that. But yeah, I used to go out to the Orkney Islands when I was a kid, and we'd go and see the stone circles and ancient tombs. And just think about people from deep time building these things with a deep significance. There's some sort of very precise knowledge that enabled them to place the stones in a certain way, in a certain alignment. To think that we understand exactly what that was. Very interesting that we think that, isn't it?
I think we're so smart. We think we're so smart, don't we?
Aye.
Paul says Gamma Boss would wipe out all the microchips, it'd wipe out all life. There's things in the universe that we can't legislate for. The conjunction has been already said. That's important to point out to anyone I've just sent out to look at the planets that you've missed it, apparently. It's only visible for about an hour or so after sunset, so it's been. Sorry. How dare you? Nothing on Christmas Day. Well, maybe Frank Foodie might do something on Christmas Day. I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything on Christmas Day. What's the present? I know. Fuck's sake. I think we need to get a few more patrons for me to work Christmas Day as well.
And if you fucking want Mark to work on Christmas Day, hit that fucking.
Yes, you want me to do a shift on Christmas Day? Get me up to 200 patrons, and then I'll do a shift on Christmas Day. We're at 193. If you do want to do that, then you go to patreon.com/you call that radio. I'll just leave that up because it's time to get the Royal Rumble countdown on, because we've got a mystery secret guest who has some interesting, esoteric, lost, sacred knowledge to share with us all. And I'm looking forward to that. So let's do the countdown. Dirty Earth. How you doing?
Hello.
How's it going?
All right, it's good. It's good, mate.
Funny, how you doing?
All right, babes. How you doing, Bram? I can't see you, which is quite gutting. I can only see
I'll just ask some cameraman.
Have you come to read our horoscopes? Yay.
I've not actually. I'm going to do a tarot, but interestingly enough,
amazing.
I've been listening to what you guys have been saying, and I've got. Am I allowed to show books? Is that right?
Yeah, do what you want. It's just the robots can't stop us doing that yet.
All right, awesome. Right, so all the psychedelic stuff you're talking about. I've been microdosing I started tripping when I was a lot younger, like massively. I was a twat and I took too much and all the usual shit that you do. And I didn't touch it for a long time. And in the last few years, I've been kind of studying it a bit more, and I've been microdosing since October last year. And it's had a massive effect on me. It's totally really changed a lot of stuff. Stop smoking weed, stop drinking.
Wow.
Not because I'm trying to be all Mary Poppins or anything, but just because it's time, I'm getting older, and the mushrooms kind of helped me to get rid of the bullshit and the anxiety and the limiting beliefs that you hold on to kind of not move forward with your life. You know what I mean? So I've been doing a lot of study on it anyway. So I've got loads
psychedelic, sorry. Yeah, what is a microdose for you? What would you say is a good amount to microdose?
For me, I'll take 5. But I would probably recommend if you're not used to it, then I would probably start with 1 or 2. I mean, it's you can add up.
And it's the Scottish mushrooms.
Say again?
Scottish mushrooms.
Yeah, total local organic.
Also, bear in mind when we talk about dosages, everyone, that there's different mushrooms have different strengths. So if we're saying 1 or 2 Scottish mushrooms, that might not mean 1 or 2 Keynesian mushrooms from Holland or something like that either. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I've been
tell us about the book. Tell us about the
I've
book.
done right with picking, but I've not. You know, if I didn't have any, then I'd be taking truffles. I think you can buy them in microdose doses as well, so you don't have to worry about, you know, going to another planet when you've not done it at all. But a lot of people I know, I did an article on it, and a lot of people I know have messaged me privately and said about it and had a few chats with them. They've all gone off and done it, and all of them have come back and said it was quite life-changing. It's made a massive difference to me. It's, you know, my life has got better again. There's a certain amount of joy there that wasn't there before because I was so bogged down with everything else. And I think in this year, when we've all had to stop what we're doing and change what we're doing, I think it's probably more important than ever. I had to fight off a load of youths to get them around here because like, there's a lot of people here about cars, right? And there's me, like this old woman with my dog running about, thinking I'm the farmer's wife or something. And there's all this young crew stoating about, and I was like, oh, hey, you. But you must be following them and stuff. They must have thought I was on Bill or something, because that's what happens when I go clubbing there. And I ask anybody if they've got any disco biscuits. They're all like, "You're old Bill, aren't you?" I'm like, "Fucking hell." That was bloody clubbing was over, like, you know what I mean? So I got like done there. But these books, right? So, the Psychedelic Mysteries of the Feminine. This is a really good one. It's lots of different articles on really cool women. The foreword's by Alison Gray, which is Alex Gray's missus, which obviously they know loads about drugs, don't they? Spirituality and psychedelics as well. That's a good one as well to get your head round if you don't know anything about it. Just medicine as well is another one that's really good. And this one I totally recommend, How to Change Your Mind, The New Science of Psychedelics. Also a good read.
That's brilliant.
If you don't know anything about it, they're good books to start with.
Amazing.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah, you didn't expect me to know stuff, did you? You thought I was just going to come on and tell you shit. Tell you funny.
Well, I thought you were just going to come on and talk about a colander.
No, well, I'm going to talk about that as well. But the other thing that you didn't say, but you know, you were talking about releasing natural DMT and getting it from meditation and different ways you can get it. None of you's mentioned Tantra. And I've had some experiences with Tantra that have actually, like, I had this magic. Should I tell you this experience I had? It's not like massively sexy time. There's obviously some in there, but I had like a thing with a dude where we had this tantric session for like 6 hours of constant edging. So bringing yourselves to the point of orgasm but not coming, and you just keep that going for as long as you possibly can. And we did it for about 6 hours, and I swear that it released some. It was like I'd released natural DMT or something. I'd released something. I've gone beyond substate, which is when you get an overflow of endorphins from sex, right? That's where DOMs put their submissives in that state. That's why it's called substate, or it's known as substate. I mean, it was beyond that. It was beyond anything. Like, it was beyond any buzz that I'd ever had before. From drugs, from meditation, from exercise, actually, extreme exercise does it as well. And I went on this massive, and I never saw this guy again because he was a bit of a prick, he was a bit of a fuckboy, which is all good. Like, you know what I mean? I got something major out of it. I told him it was the most cosmic thing that had happened to me for years, and I think he thought that I was really into him, but it wasn't. It was like I'd had a really traumatic relationship before that, a few years before that. And it felt like it really shifted some energy from me that I was holding onto. And it wasn't just because I was with someone and I felt good. It was definitely a chemical change in my body that changed. It changed me. It changed me for a long time as well. About 6 months, I was in this place where I was buzzing. So I went on this big mission to do it again. And I wrote, almost like channeled this thing about conscious energy exchange and how having a sacred union with a partner and being able to have that tantric union where you're totally consciously aware that you're doing it would be able to bring on that buzz a lot quicker, a lot stronger, and how amazing it would be if you could do that together. And I wanted to find somebody that I could do that with. So the idea was that we would edge for 3 months continuously over the phone, videos and stuff, and then meet, and then actually have the physical tantric session. We do that in order to try and release our own natural DMT. So I went on to FetLife, right? Because I couldn't find anybody to do it, right? I wasn't with anybody at the time. So I went on to FetLife and I wrote this big thing about the experience I'd had. And I had like 3 or 4 of these like wannabe DOMs get in touch with me that were all like, "Oh yeah, I could do that for you." And then, quite easy to make cry DOMs. You just say no, and then they sort of fuck off, and it's like, And there was like all these yoga boys that were right into the Kundalini energy, because apparently release of Kundalini energy, opening it is quite like a scary, dangerous thing. But I had my Kundalini open years ago, so it was like in a different experience. So I knew what to expect. I'd done a lot of drugs, so I wasn't frightened of these altered states or dimensions of really altered states, really different energy levels. So I found this guy, got rid of all the DOMs, found this guy, and he was this. I still talk to him actually. He's still like we still get on quite well. But he's quite a mad guy. He's quite a high up in business, in charity. He does a really cool job down south somewhere, and he's an endurance runner. And he's a millionaire, right? And he's all the things, right? And he's got all the power and stuff. But anyway, we did this. We went on this journey together, and we got about, I don't know, maybe a month and a half in. The idea is that you transcend conditional love into unconditional love, which then unites you in this sacred union where you can travel further levels of frequency into divine consciousness, which is when you're in a complete state of everything with everyone. And we got to about a month and a half, 2 months, and because he's never done drugs, he'd never done drugs, he'd never done anything like that. He'd get lost really quickly in substate. It was like the highest buzz that he'd ever had. It matched the buzz that he got from endurance running, or it went slightly above that. And because he was so straight, he just didn't really have the imagination to see that there were levels beyond that. Do you know what I mean? And I ended up getting really bored and calling it a day, like. But it was a beautiful experiment, and I would love to do it again. I think it's a really what better way to get high than shagging? Do you know what I mean? So we're not actually even shagging; it's just like hours of foreplay. So yeah. Anyway, that's my technical input to your smart conversation we was all having earlier. I was talking about the Collinger now, should I? Should I say about the Collinger?
Yeah, sorry, Joe.
I was just going to say, I was actually going to mention Tantra earlier because Bram, you were talking about kind of magic, or when you were talking about magic, because like Tantra, everyone, like it is like obviously it's about sex, Tantra, but it's kind of wider than that as well, like kind of about all kind of like enjoying or appreciating your body and like being in kind of human form and exploring that and kind of like reaching altered states and kind of union with the universe or the divine or whatever through kind of practices. So sometimes so Tantra is a kind of branch of yoga that was developed kind of initially. Yoga was a lot about kind of men sitting in caves, like not eating anything and stuff like that, and the whole idea was to be out of their body and that they wanted to be kind of disconnected from themselves and kind of connected to the kind of bigger power or whatever. And then Tantra is kind of like, sometimes it's called like a homeowner version of yoga, where it's about kind of recognizing where people are at and what people need in life and kind of exploring that. So that's where it's obviously famous from, like tantric sex and the Karma Sutra and everything like that. But there's kind of like wider, and they'll like drink alcohol and take drugs and things within kind of rituals. A lot of Aleister Crowley's kind of stuff that he talked about, and that kind of going into the occult and magic and stuff as well kind of comes from Tantra as well. I think he had like quite a powerful tantric master. So yeah, it's well interesting. That's like mad body to hear like that. That's to hear like a story of somebody that's actually kind of used it in that way, kind of with a kind of it's mad.
I have a theory that you can balance the toxic traits or the limiting beliefs you have about your masculine and feminine side by matching with a partner who you've both suffered from a joint trauma, but from on different sides of that trauma. So abuser and a victim, if you like. Maybe not that drastic though, but someone that's cheated on someone and someone that's been cheated on. Hurt that you hold within you. If you consciously exchange that energy together, then you do have the power to be able to write those energies within you, to be able, because it is like that point where you get to, if you've ever had really good sex on drugs, where you get to that point where you forget whose body's whose, and if you're feeling that or if they're feeling that, or if it's when you get to that point, there is a possibility at that point where your energy is so intertwined with the other person that, you know, it must have the power to clear things from you. I definitely felt it in the experiences to do more of it, but I think people are quite frightened of being open to that level that you need to be when you're meditating or something. It's all you, isn't it? It's all you on your own. There's no sort of, you know, you don't need to feel vulnerable in front of or with anybody else. Whereas Tantra is a joint performance or ritual. So you should both be on board with it, you know. I think it's
on that point, Pilliston Project's asking, can Kundalini energy be released through meditation or only through tantric exploration?
It can through meditation as well, but yeah, sorry, Bonnie. No, I was going to say it can through meditation as well. It's like just Kundalini is like again, I'm not an expert, but it's kind of like one of the representations of like energy. So they call like the life force, like prana and kind of yoga or chi within kind of, or would say energy or spirit, maybe something like that. But one of the kind of representations is this idea of kind of like a serpent, like a snake at the bottom of your, coiled up at the bottom of your spine. And that's like a kind of big, like massive battery of energy basically. And sometimes if through various different practices or experiences that can be released, or some of that energy can be released into your body, and it can be quite an overwhelming, intense experience for people. So sometimes people force it too much, and that's what Bonnie was saying about being kind of damaging. Sometimes people can kind of like, I don't know how badly people could, but maybe just feel out of sorts and not be right in themselves, maybe cause themselves some kind of mental health stuff or whatever. Could be like examples of how you could hurt yourself by pushing things too quickly. But usually, I mean, I think also it's like it can be a very positive kind of experience where you kind of have revelations about yourself, the universe, and you feel good and better in yourself as well. So maybe you want to say more about it, Bonnie. I don't know.
But it's connected as well to the vagus nerve. Anyway, when the vagus nerve is completely in line with your meridians or your chakras, your energy centers, that it can open the Kundalini. There's different thoughts that people, you know, there's lots of different theories on stuff. This is going to sound really depressing, but when I was sexually abused as a child, really quite young, for a long period of time, and I felt that there was something about me for a long time. I mean, a lot of it was trauma and repressed stuff and limiting beliefs, but also there was like an energy that I was giving off that made me kind of attract these people to me for, like, you know, bad relationships. And I know some of it's like mental health issues, but there was something more than that. There was something that was just slightly different. And I did some research on it, and I found a guy that was saying that if a child has been abused, they think that your Kundalini can be opened, that energy, sexual energy, can be opened and kind of wedged open and stays open, and other people can pick up on it. I don't know how true it is, but it made sense to me that there was that connection with that disalignment. But then when you start researching into that sort of stuff, it all turns into fucking aliens or lizards and you know, or God, you know what I mean? And it's all like, and then that all really confuses me, really. And I've got enough trauma to think about all that shit. Do you know what I mean? So I like a bit of spirituality, esoteric light. You know what I mean? Because if you get too involved, sometimes I think, you know, when you have like an awakening moment, a realization, which I did with a colander, which I'll it's sometimes it's like it's not coming. It comes across as really sharp, like if you have like an information download from your higher self or whatever you believe in, and it's like it's there, you know it all. Like when you're tripping, when you suddenly have that massive epiphany about life, but it's really fuzzy and it's like you can't read it like it's in a paragraph, but you know it. You just instinctively know it. It's kind of like that. Like so, yeah. But I think it is. I think, say that again.
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing with you there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting, though. It is an interest. I've done a lot of work with energy over the last couple of years with trauma, relating to trauma, to try and let go of limiting beliefs about myself and just kind of get myself in a better place of balance, which is why I've, you know, reading up on the psychedelics and taking them and doing the tarot and all these different things that kind of being out in nature and stuff that give me these different comforts. I've just lost my train of thought. What I was talking about. What was I just saying? Why was I saying that?
Talk about Kundalini, talking about.
And energy, working with energy.
Energy, yeah. And I've been working with energy for the last couple of years, and it makes a massive difference if you're aware of where your energy is in you, and you're letting the feelings flow through you, like you do with meditation. It makes a huge difference. But I find a lot of stuff is it's either too fluffy for me, or too woo-woo, or too, I want working class spirituality, really. Do you know what I mean? I can't, I find, even by my first set of tarot decks, I was like, oh, mate, am I being like white girl privileged? And I'm going to end up with like fucking crystal stone on my fanny and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And holding it down and that. Do you know what I mean? So I do get the fear. I do get kind of the fear of that. I think it's a little bit of maybe a little bit of shame, like, a little bit of, I don't know, but we do need more of it. That's a fact. We all do. People really do need to get with their heart energy and come from a place of, because everybody can understand energy in the terms of, like, we know what a bad vibe feels like, and that's just energy. We know what love feels like. We know what these energies feel like, and you can absorb other people's energy, and you can affect other people with your own energy. So, it's something that we should be now consciously making a difference for it to become a part of our everyday life.
It's interesting that you brought the class into that, Bonnie, because it's like, this kind of chat is something that maybe people, working class would maybe feel uncomfortable talking about it. And the fact is that, like, when you've got energy, like you said, there is a real thing. There is energy vampires out there. There's people that just take all the energy from you, and there's people who just come into a room and light up a room and just, like, as well. So it's a very real thing. I mean, what's the we don't really need science on any kind of scientific approval to know that is true.
Yeah, no, it kills the marriage a little bit. So the magic a little bit sometimes, science, isn't it? Sometimes I just want to kind of, I mean, I don't, someone that's had a lot of trauma. A lot of people have trauma. Have a lot of you kind of tend to have a lot of magical thinking because you've made up so many kind of stories to protect yourself in the younger days when you're going through that abuse. So it can be quite kind of tricky to go down, for me anyway, to go down these roads of information where you're not sure whether something is real or not. Like today, for example, the Great Conjunction, I'd read a lot of stuff that said there was going to be a massive DNA download. There was going to be like a green mist that was going to cover everyone. The government weren't going to let us go outside in it, and like there was a lot of stuff. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of things going on, and I read one of the tarot readers that I follow. She said, "Oh, apparently all of us black people are going to get superpowers at midnight, like so you can pick your own power," which I thought was quite funny. The comments were brilliant.
Well, it's not midnight yet.
It's not. No, we've still got time. Yeah, we're still waiting for it.
Who's going to get the superpowers from the information download? You never know. You never do know.
I think this is that thing again, isn't it, though, about like when you're talking about stuff like this, if you're starting to buy into this kind of chat, which is a bit, it's like a lot of it is based in kind of it's about kind of going beyond what we know, or kind of going with that kind of more like undescribable kind of stuff to do with feelings and to do with emotion and spirituality and stuff. It's kind of like woo-woo stuff. That once you start kind of down that mad rabbit hole and end up thinking that a group of people are going to get superpowers, or Donald Trump is Jesus, or whatever it is, do you know what I mean? A lot of like within, like, not to like go on to talk about politics too much, but like a lot of that just happened with Trump. There was the kind of yoga spiritual kind of community and hippies were a massive part of that, and I'm just like, whoa, how's that? Like, how did that? How do you know? So
I think that comes to the
starting to be like, when use this word woke, but starting to kind of like look beyond. Then it becomes.
Well, I think it's because of the influx of fake news, because just basically Trump and his people were just saying, don't believe your eyes, you know what I mean? Believe in a bigger picture. Trust the plan, which is a kind of thing that's getting bandied about a lot, which is basically making predictions that don't come true, and then saying, "Oh, but you've got to trust the plan," and that kind of speaks to the sort of the higher power, the faith that people have in religion. They have it
it's the
often.
universe, listen to the
You've got to-
universe.
you've got to believe,
Yeah.
trust it, have faith, and it will all be okay. And it also, but yeah, I mean, I would imagine there's a lot of people maybe starting to question that maybe that they've been lied to with this plan that just never seems to materialize. And I think also it just, people that are open-minded to things that we can't prove are maybe susceptible to marketing techniques, and that's what's actually been happening. Is that there's been lots of sponsored ads if people are sharing certain things that maybe certain politicians pick up on, and because in the past they couldn't be saying this stuff on the television because there's certain things there's a certain line that you can't cross with truthfulness. Well, TV companies can't trust, but with social media, someone can make a complete lie up and then promote it as a sponsored ad. And I think people, and there's some really nice people that are vulnerable, that are susceptible to falling for this. Lots of good souls that can fall for it. And there's an element of sort of narcissist people who like to have secret information, and they like to sort of be the guy that has this secret. There's people talking about their intel. I've got some good intel that this is going to happen tomorrow, and it never ever happens. But they just say, "Oh, it's cool. It was a double bluff," because they're playing 5D chess and they're just had to throw people off the path. And it's all very exciting, isn't it? It's like a movie, it's like a TV game. It's what you've got to decrypt the messages. It's like a computer game, basically. So I can see why people, especially this year, because everyone's bored, they've got nothing to do, and they're looking for something to latch onto that they might try and explain something. You know what I mean? So I think that's where it comes from. What about the tarot cards? I mean, my understanding of tarot cards is very limited.
Well, mine is as well, actually. I've got freaking loads of them because I'm quite addicted.
In fact, sorry, we missed it. Did we cover the colander properly?
We should all pick a card. See what
happened there. So, my mate messaged me and he said the planets align at 5:30, and I was like, "What is this freaking wartime cryptic message that you just sent me?" I mean, I knew the conjunction was happening, right? But I didn't realise what time it was. I hadn't taken that much notice. I just thought I'd vibe out at some point in a salt bath and have a spliff and send vibes out to the universe. You know what I mean? It'd be all good, right? But he said, "Oh, they're aligned and it's in the southeast." So I've got one of those sky tracker things on my phone, so I can hold it up and see where the planets are. And it happened. I said to my mate, "I'm not." He said, "Can you feel the planets?" And I said, "Not really, mate. I'm washing up." But I got the thing out and I looked at it, and the planets were aligned at that very moment, right in front of the sink. So right where I was facing, and I just laughed because I thought, "Oh, that's all right. That's so ironic, isn't it? With the patriarchy and that be washing up and bloody new age of Aquarius, blah blah blah." Now he's all washing up, right? And I put the colander up and that, and I went and sort of sat down and I looked at the colander and I was like, "Why do I do that?" And my whole adult life, I've been putting the colander upside down when I drain it. But it don't fucking matter, does it? Because it's got holes in it, so you can put it up whatever way you fucking want. My whole entire life, I thought this is the way you do it, and I'm going to do it this way forever. So I fucking put it up the other way, just as a little. This is it. This is the change. This is the change that I'm looking for. But it's interesting. It's a draining thing. It's interesting in that it's you do these things that are really quite pointless, that do quite.
It's a metaphor for draining energy.
Say again?
It's a metaphor for draining your energy.
Yeah, totally, yeah. Like all Collins are the vampires, mate. Energy vampires.
Yes, if you want to join the conversation on Twitter, the hashtag is all Collanders are vampires. Hashtag all Collanders are vampires. And what we're going to do? We're going to. I think we will. Chris just suggested that we all pick a tarot card. He's up for it. We do a live tarot. Okay.
We might all get death.
Death is apparently a good thing. That's one thing I know. It could be a new
rebirth.
I'm shuffling.
I'm just going to have a quick break. I'm just going to play a very quick song just to sort of break it up a little bit because I want to get a cup of tea. I'm on the spicy chai tea, so I need to have one of them. And also, if anyone gives people a chance as well, if you've got any questions, then put them in the comments as well. But this is a wee track because we're talking about fractals and patterns. And this is a tune I did with Daryl Donald called I Can See Patterns.
Classic.
Right.
I was falling and twisting. I felt as if I was falling.
Falling emphatically, butterflies in my belly. Sell me a plan B remedy to embellish all my jealousy. Black funk instinct developed from ancestry. The meaning of like passport protected in the DNA. Melancholy messages transmitted from big energies.
Language barriers, a certainty comes with the territory.
Terminal illness with the promise of eternity. The led to be equity. So by zealots every day. Universal references are said to be the death of me. Threaten my integrity, which left of my legacy. Free falling apathy, contradicting gravity. A 0-hour contract in a slaughterhouse factory. Raised in a strange place with a small town mentality. Savagery critique for speaking in a unique way. These ones get clipped before they flee the nest. Let's pause the backlash till these cats see success. I can see the patterns.
Wide, but no sound.
Drowning in the quicksand, but can't stop it from happening. They say you can't change the world. This is ludicrous. Every move you make creates your own universe. Your 5 closest friends, you and them are influenced. The ones you spend the time with impacts an actual difference. Escape eternal doom by severable foot with the cobbled up excuse of gobbledygook. We sing when we win. We sin when we're broke. If we're in it for ourselves, it's a sin of joke. It's the temperament to pin the tail on something to cope. Point the finger or don't, or are you chinning the bloke? Or are you singing for your supper till they chip in a poke? Somewhere along the line we lost sight of simple folk. Are strapped in bands to manage such a blinkered approach. We crumpled up notes and a singular vote. Frozen to the spot, gripped by shadowy intruders. Forever falling back till we hack the computers. We used to plot and dream, now the dream is reoccurring. Rot and scream, blow the screens and the pain is enduring. I can see the patterns. Drowning in the quicksand, but can't stop it from happening. I can see the patterns.
I remember my dreams by the colour they are. The colours that you see in churches. Bright blues and yellows and reds. Blue and yellow and green. Red and green and blue and orange. The colours that you see in churches.
Brothers and sisters, may the peace that can only come from the one God be upon you. We are here to tell the people that we hear you. One God will not allow us as people of conscience to lose our morale.
Powered by our patrons. We are indeed powered by our patrons. Thanks to everyone who supports the show. I want a special thanks to Ian, Rory, Kath, Louise, Mo, Tam, Andrew, Martin, Colin, Susan and Bombscare, who all signed up this December to the Patreon. Do you know what? I think there's more than that. That's out of date. That is out of date. That was out of date. Because there's people that signed up since Saturday. I know that Catherine Rudy was one who played a brilliant set on Saturday. I see Dave Nicholson, Claire McBrien, who signed up for the year. Because that's the other thing for folk that don't want to sign up monthly. There's actually you can just pay it for the year, then that gets you in for the full year again, for the raffles and for the bonus content and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you to everyone supporting the show. It wouldn't be possible without you. If you want to help us build the thing, then go to patreon.com/you call that radio. This week we're doing the Age of Aquarius special tonight. We'll do that in a little minute. Just want to give a shout out to Colin and Mustard, who are doing the show tomorrow. They'll be live on here at 7:00. Then we've got Max Thompson live from Toronto at 7:00 in our time. Is looking forward to that one. Then we're doing the awards ceremony on Christmas Eve as our Christmas Eve special show. Boxing Day is Overheard in the West End special. Oh, hold on, I'll move that banner away. With them, yeah. Roberta, Becky, Mima, Peter, Apocalyptic Theorists, John Boyle, incredible lineup, and there is more to be added, including a Deke Jackson and the Circus Fantasticus set. And and I think there may be a Frank Foodie Christmas message. There may be. We don't know if he is definitely going to be available on Christmas Day. It's a busy day for Frank, but maybe because there's catering's been banned, he might be okay to do it. We just listened to Jackal Trades there, and this is Chris is here. We've got Joe here. We've got Bonnie and Texture here as well. Okay, we are ready, I think, for a tarot card reading.
Mystic Bond's tarot reading. Right, so going to start with you, Chris, yeah?
Hey.
So I'm just going to, oh, cards already jumped out, mate. Do you want that one, or do you want to think of something?
I'll take the one that jumped out because I trust the universe to have selected that for me.
Right then, it is.
Yeah.
Can you see that? The Eight of Wands.
Oh, that is
So,
interesting.
Is it? Do you read tarot? Did you know?
No, it's interesting because I was born on the 8th day of the 8th week of the 8th month of the 8th decade, and I weighed 8 pounds, and I got an 8. So that's all.
Right, coming in fast for you, number 8. It actually means movement, fast-paced change, action, alignment, and air travel. So something is moving in fast for you. Something that you want to do is coming in fast, right?
Ooh.
No, mystical. Who's next? Shout
out. Joe.
Yeah,
Joe.
I'll go next. Yeah.
Right, think of the cards while I shuffle them. And so come out already. Oh, mate, the sun.
Oh.
Happiest card in the deck.
Oh,
that is.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. That's all the good things happening. That is.
I'll take that.
I've got another set of tarot cards here, actually, that I'll see if I can. I'll find it when someone else is talking, right? But I've got this pack of tarot cards here called the Golden Tarot, but the sun in that looks like Louis Capaldi on the back of a horse, like baby Louis Capaldi. I'll find it and show you, right? But like, yeah, the sun is it's the major arcana, and it's pretty much the happiest cards in the pack. And it says here, positivity, fun, warmth, success, and vitality.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Wow.
So is that
Feel good about that?
Yes.
We're doing good so far, aren't we?
Right, Brad, yours will be something nihilistic, like fucking death or something, wouldn't it?
This is just change my friend.
Better be.
Oh, I was coming out.
Death is actually, but that's true though. That death is actually just means new beginnings or something like that. And in the world of tarot,
it does actually. Same as the tower. Everyone freaks out about the tower, but that's kind of like the death of the ego, really. It's about letting go of your limiting beliefs and basically letting go and surrendering into it, and then good things come after. So you've got the Queen of Wands, Bram, which is also a really good card as well. I'm going to have to look that up as well. Where is she? Queen of Wands, courage, confidence, independence, social butterfly, and determination.
Social butterfly. That's because I'm Leo. That's where I'm getting that one.
It's so real. Right, who's next then? You, Mark, yeah?
It's me, yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Probably says something like, have a fucking week off, mate.
No, you shouldn't have tried to take Christmas Day off, and I'm getting into trouble in the comments. People are like, what, you're taking Christmas Day off? Fuck me. Get back to work, you.
You've got, where are we? The Knight of Pentacles. So that means money's coming into you. It's coming your way, money. It's all about, where are we going? Knight of Pentacles. It's all about money coming towards you. Sharpish as well, hard work as well, productivity, routine, and conservatism. I don't know what that's about. Not having that. Well, maybe don't go mental over Christmas. Maybe that's what it's telling you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look after yourself, don't go mad. There you go. Mystic as fuck, but you all feel loads better now.
I've never been called conservative before. But...
I have an interesting fact about that. The word Tory comes from an old Irish word for conservative that means robber or thief. And it directly comes from that, the word Tory. Tories are cunts. See,
Yes.
We've got Mako who's saying, I read Tazo cards.
Big up, Mako.
Hey,
Colette says,
Tazo
baby doll,
cards.
would desire to acquire would desire to acquire one of your cards. Okay, Colette would like a tarot card.
There we go.
So
She's like a
she'd
tarot
like to
card,
desire to
right.
acquire a tarot card reading.
Right,
So this is
hold
for
on,
Colette.
I've found baby Lewis Capaldi. Could you see that?
That's funny.
You saw him. Right, so I put in a card for who am I putting it for? Colette.
This is the Tory. This is the Tories word, by the way, for anyone who was curious about the spelling of Tories.
That's it
So,
there, yeah.
a good old Irish word meaning robbing bastards, I believe it means.
Mhm.
Right, I've got the magician.
All right, okay, the magician.
Yeah.
Colette, you have the magician card. What does the magician mean?
It means to balance in all things, actually, and you can be quite sly with it, but it generally means that you've mastered all areas of yourself, and you can go forwards with the magic of that, awareness into all things, and they can be prosperous if you allow them to be. Because obviously, everyone has free will, so it don't matter what the cards say. If you decide that you want to go and do what you want to go and do, then you're going to do it.
Colette, well, that's a good one. You have mastered all things of balance in a balanced way.
I wish I had. Like, I think that's a lifetime's work for everybody, isn't it? Really, I don't think it's that should be what we do, mate. We should study our inner worlds and make art and play. That's what we should be doing, looking after the planet, with these biological creatures that are part of this whole ecosystem. And that's really what our focus should be, not all this consumerist fucking bullshit that we live in, the society we live in now.
Yeah, we're out there trying to explore space when we haven't even discovered what it means to be even 1% human. We haven't even tapped into any of our potential as true Jedis that we are.
Is there not an argument to be said, though, that by exploring space, it helps us to learn about that stuff, about what it means to be human?
Well, exploring space is exploring you, because you are space, inner cosmos, outer cosmos. It's all the same thing. But yeah, we need to get the fuck off this rock, because it's probably going to blow.
I wondered if, we would so if Earth was, there's a theory that the planets in our solar system are part of the chakra system of a larger being, and it's ruled by the heart chakra, which is the Earth, right? And if that's the case, and we're out there as this cosmic being, we're like a fucking cosmic Boris Johnson. That's what we're putting out to the rest of these fucking galaxies. How fucking embarrassing is that, mate? Do you know what I mean? We have somebody better than that. It's so embarrassing.
Someone has a cosmic experience of psychedelics, and they actually meet the aliens, and they say, "Take me to your leader," and you're like, "Here, mate, gonna know the." I don't think we can. He's not ready. He's not ready for it.
But he's not our leader, really, is he? Do you know what I mean? He's a prick. He just happens to be in charge, which is very unfortunate, but not for long, hopefully.
No, I think he'll be gone in January, February. He just needs to crash the pound for his rich banker pals that have gambled on the pound crashing on the 1st of January, and then once the pound crashes, he'll fuck off and maybe into the sunset within the next few months. I'd imagine we'll probably get that guy. We see
hopefully not a nuclear sunset.
Jacob triple barreled name will probably come in instead, and repeat again. But I think he's definitely going. I don't think he really actually wants to be Prime Minister. I think he realised that here you've got to do quite a lot of work, and that's him taking sickies all the time. But it's just I don't think it really suits his lifestyle. So I think he's just going to take all the money and fuck off into the sunset. That's probably his tarot card reading. We've got more tarot, says Petra. Petra, would you like? Can you ask the tarot about the outcome of mankind? Is it worth that?
One card.
Can you give a card for mankind?
Universe, pick a card.
Universe, pick a card.
I think we'll have to do an oracle card for that, because I don't think the tarot's right for the.
What's an oracle card? I don't understand. What's an oracle card?
Oracle cards are different. They're more sort of like for yes, no, everyday sort of reading pools, whereas tarot cards are more kind of in depth.
A magic 8-ball.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. Right, so we've got the fates. Oh well, that's typical, isn't it? The fates is what we've got. So don't question the universe, mate. It does what it wants. We'll just have to fit in, won't we?
The inevitable heat death of the universe. Hey.
I think what's going to happen though is that the patriarchy and consumerism and capitalism, it's going to crumble. It's already crumbling. Do you know what I mean? It's just a matter of time.
Because we made celebrities of our chefs. That's the first sign of the apocalypse. As soon as every empire and civilization that have got to a point they've made celebrities of their chefs, they have crumbled within about 100 to 200 years of that. And here we are with Gordon Ramsay and Jamie Oliver. So we're going down.
You said this because the Bus Stop Apocalypse cover from the Gyro Babies album, there was a lot of argument over who the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse were, and I really wanted Jamie Oliver to be in there.
You would have been right.
That would have been right. It would have been right. See?
You were right, Mark.
So I would have gone for Simon Cowell, Rupert Murdoch,
Jeremy Kyle.
Jeremy Kyle, David Cameron.
Yeah.
Although, no, it's still not bad.
Was he fucking a pig?
This is before he fucked the pig, and
the Gyro Babies told the future.
Yeah, we told the future. We did tell the future. And this is also before he did do the Brexit fuck up, which may or may not. We'll find out. Although I think the last I heard last night was that we're going to be applying for a Brexit extension because there's a new variant of a disease.
Are your songs being written by the CIA to influence Scottish public opinion by any chance?
Jeez, I've heard that. I have been called mainstream media this year a few times. So because I had an opinion that differed from someone else's, they're like, well, you would say that because you're mainstream media. So that's a true story. Okay, we got. I used to. Hold on. Colette says, yes, I can't that. That's why I'm an eccentric Egypt, Sugar Cube. Love baby doll. Thanks heaps, babes, for the card. Karen says, don't. I've tuned into her from Catherine Tate. Ewan says, I used to do the ching, but it hurt the eye ching, but it hurt my nose too much. Petrus is great card. Do me a tarot. Will we ever move back to Scotland? This is from Mako, who's trying to get back to Scotland.
Put the cards out for that, mate. The answer is yes. You just need to stop bloody hoarding and packing, my friend. Come home, brother.
Petrus says the cards are hot. Ask more.
I think it's been quite accurate, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not that. Do you know something else that I've done recently? Is I did some shamanic journeying and shamanic drumming, and what you do, right, is so you have to you repeatedly bang the drum to a certain rhythm, quite a fast rhythm, for 10 minutes, and you have to picture yourself going inside a tree and meeting your spirit guide, who will take you on a journey through the underworld, through the roots, and then you'll come out and you'll have this vision, right? So, that is the vision. So anyway, so I did this shamanic drumming, when you visualize yourself going into a tree, and go down inside the roots of this tree, and I met this mole, right? And this mole's like let's go, and I'm like, fuck off, I'm like a wolf, mate. Do you know what I mean? I'm not a mole. So I looked, right, there was a couple of blackbirds, and they were all like, they sort of like, it was like a bit of a fucked up Disney film, right? So it was like, the birds all went, no, I don't think so. And I caught the fox out the corner of my eye, and it was like, no, I don't think so. And I saw a bear, and it just looked up at me and just went back to sleep again, like it was hibernating. And all the way through, this mole was with me. He was like, come on. And in the end, I was like, right, I'm surrendered to the mole. I'll go with the mole. And we just went through all this root system and then come out of a big molehill. It must have been a big molehill to get me out of it, but we come out of it, and then I was like a tree in the sunlight and just stretching my arms up to the sky. And it was lovely. It was beautiful, but I was a bit disappointed that it was a mole. But then I looked up at a mole, and it said, because I want to be so amazing. You know, when everyone says, "Oh, what's your spiritual animal?" Everyone's like a fucking eagle, or whatever. It's like, if I was a puff of this fish. Like, but anyway, so I got this mole, but it turns out that actually a mole is somebody that's really in tune with their intuition. They don't see very well with their eyes. They feel it with their energy. So actually, it was quite a positive thing. Like I didn't feel so lame. I was like, oh god, middle-aged shamanic journey, innit?
Wow. So
Well,
is was that all through doing the drumming that you got all that kind of? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I've never tried that. I'd love to.
Drums amazing. I've got one here actually. You know what I made it?
Ayahuasca ceremonies, isn't it?
Yeah, look, listen, I don't know if you can hear it, bro, but when it's up against the ear, because obviously, you know, we all like bass, right? So when it's up against your ear, oh, it's just...
That's nice, yeah. That's working on me already. I can feel that already, man.
Honestly, it's so good. Get round the fire.
Joe's got a singing bowl. Why didn't you get a jam on the go?
Yeah, I've got. I'm not sure what it is actually. Yeah, I've got to say. Well, I've been reading quite a lot on that.
I think it might be hidden under I think it might be hidden underneath the couch because someone was going to use it as an ashtray.
Ashtray, yeah. Actually, I was like, no,
hidden away. Don't do that. Don't turn the singing bowl into an ashtray.
But like, yeah, I've been reading quite a lot of stuff about that. About like kind of. Obviously, we were talking earlier on about frequencies and stuff, but how using different tones and different sounds can be really healing, or can like make your, you know, can etch again altered states and stuff like you've just described there. That's wild. Yeah. But like
really
apparently for healing and stuff as well, it's good for But
it's really good.
Moles are full, says Marco. It's been said that I look like a mole when I wake up in the morning because it takes me about an hour to load up. You know, I very struggle to open my eyes.
You're a sloth, more like a sloth, aren't you?
So I think that's good. That this all it is me seeing with my intuition.
That's a compliment. I love sloths.
Sloths.
Mark.
Root system to shun.
Mark, you played a song earlier called "I Can See the Patterns," and I think, you know, there is a thing called pareidolia, which is the tendency in human vision to see patterns, to try and make patterns out of clouds or forests, and they actually think that, you know, that could be attributable, the factor that's attributable to mystic visions, to ideas of, you know, God speaking to you from the bush. I think the same is true in politics too. You know, like what is QAnon except for kind of like conspiracy theory, paranoia, pareidolia gone mad. It's all the patterns together. So I think, you know, what's amazing about everything we've been talking about tonight is that the echoes and patterns that people have seen over the, you know, countless ages of humankind have kind of been reproduced in these echoes of things that we've got as yoga, as you know, everything from any small ritual that survives from a cultural practice right up to our belief in the sanctity of human life as a value. All of these things are like cultural artifacts, and the thing is, we tend to think of these things now as like, you know, symbols of progress. Like the more of these things that we've kept alive, the more we've progressed. In actual fact, you know, knowledge can be gained and lost and is recreated and reimagined and reinvented like all the time. It's you got to think about where the inheritance of the ideas is coming from, and particularly the Christian idea of going towards some sort of end of history, some sort of transcendent event that colors, you know, a lot of our beliefs in technological progress, a lot of our beliefs in, you know, the evolution of ethics towards some sort of perfect neoliberal system. All of these things we've been talking about tonight, from yoga to occult magic to psychedelics, are things that kind of help you question that stuff. And the question, I think, that the danger is then is that you start recognizing patterns in clouds a little bit. So it does require some kind of careful reading. It requires some careful thinking too. It's like that, to me, is why we keep coming back to the word occult, is that's a Christian inheritance. This idea that the occult is the forbidden, but the occult is just the hidden or the misunderstood, you know. All of these types of revealed knowledge that we've talked about are no different than learning quantum physics. It's just as theoretical a discipline, you know.
And I think that's why it's so worrying when you heard there was a couple of attempts to sort of censor the internet, and they were saying that the phrase esoteric was going to be banned, and that could mean anything, because who decides what is esoteric knowledge?
My back
it means hidden, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think
it's coming from my book collection then. I must have like a secret book collection of stuff that could have me arrested then, if that's the
Yeah.
future, like, you know, because that my bookshelves are full of that stuff. I've got, you know, well, because knowledge is power, in it, and you know, learning about ourselves is the way that we change the way that things are.
Yeah.
I think
as well, a lot of this kind of stuff that we're talking about as well is like when we were talking earlier about history and what is recorded in history, and you know, like who has recorded history, and that's why, in my mind, potentially some of this stuff hasn't, maybe partly because people want to keep some of this stuff secret, because you know, maybe there's things that there's a process you need to go down before you can maybe handle certain things. Maybe like if we're talking about like Kundalini can be damaging if you've not maybe kind of went down a right path or something. If again, that may or may not be the case, but then if you think of like we are sort of like again like the witch hunts, like witchcraft and things like that, it's like women, it's maybe people of colour that are in a tribe somewhere that have got all this knowledge and skill, but until fairly probably like, well, I don't know, kind of the last century, I suppose people started to kind of delve more initially out of kind of a weird curiosity, and then maybe more towards the end of the last century, it's starting to actually maybe take a lot of it on board and go, well, actually that might be relevant and to what we do. So it's piecing things back together that for a long time nobody was interested in, because they thought, oh, that's nonsense, or those people aren't important, so it's not maybe. So a lot of things would have been lost because of that kind of positioning and how history was recorded. But I do also think that a lot of these things people didn't necessarily want. Like I've got
what quite consumerist society, just they can't sell us stuff with the same vigor if you've got people that are happy and connected. So a lot of our society has been about, you know, photoshopped models and everybody looking their best and people feeling insecure, which makes them turn to materialism and all these other isms.
It's all storytelling, you know. In the past 50 years, the dominant mode of storytelling has been visual. You know, before that, for a very long time, it was written, and before that, it was oral. And you know, I think everything from magical grimoires to subjective accounts of LSD experiences to peer-reviewed scientific papers, they're all just forms of storytelling. Like I don't know, back when I was selling myself as a poet, I wrote a poem which started with the line that modern science is a complex creation myth, which I think I nicked from celebrity TV physicist Brian Cox. But that's what he was saying, was that, you know, science is essentially the most sophisticated creation myth that we've come up with so far. And that if you went back into deep time, just the observation that the sun went down and the moon came up, that was the beginning of the creation myth. So, you know, nothing is invalid in my eyes. Like, there is no invalid text. There is no, but there's also no account that can give, you know, like claim to any kind of objectivity. It's you know, the classic definition of ideology from Marx is they do it, but they do not know they are doing it. And everything which claims to be non-ideological, to be presented subjectively, that's where we find ideology at its absolute purest. So I think there's that. It's very hard to separate yourself from the doctrines and the thinking and the symbolic network of your time, your place, your gender. You know, it's very hard to separate yourself from that and look at something. The only way that you can understand yourself is with stories, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was going to say that kind of intellectualization of everything is like something in like what you're kind of talking about there need, you know, we need to work everything out, and there needs to be, you know, everything needs to, I don't know, this kind of, there needs to be theories, there needs to be proof. And again, I know there does need to be theories and proof. I'm not saying there doesn't, but that is, I think it's like left a lot uninvestigated or left to the side. And I also think that kind of I mean, I've read loads, and I know names of people as we all have, but like I think sometimes that can be exclusionary as well, like what Bonnie was saying there, kind of class wise as well, like it's just or you know what I mean, or just like for people that just aren't interested in this kind of chat. Because I mean, I've been at parties and like been with somebody like that's into this kind of thing and chatting away, and other people just been like, oh my God, just like leave it alone. This is actually boring chat. But so everyone's got different kind of. Some people are like drawn into this and others aren't. But I suppose it's like I suppose what I'm saying is it's about how can it be like accessible in a kind of wider sense. I don't know how that's again tangent.
It's a really good point. No, it's a really good point.
Yeah, like I'm like because I'm including myself in that as well because like I've like read a lot and I'm not amazing actually at remembering names and stuff. I'm always like amazed by like Chris, particularly. You're amazing at just like remembering these words, which I think is just like I love that, but like, it's not really my skill set. But just because I've kind of read enough, I can kind of do that a wee bit. But yeah, it's always something that's I'm kind of conscious of.
Got some comments coming in from Pillowstone Project. Yes, it is convictions that hinder us. Magic is about undoing certainties. Chris, do you want to chip in with something about the magic?
I believe in magic, yeah. There are some things that can't be tested empirically, and that doesn't mean you should throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some things that can only be experienced through personal experience and only known through personal experience. And like to tie it all in, what we're talking about is earlier getting high without drugs. There is loads of different ways to achieve that, and we have found quite a few just in this discussion. Tantric sex, running was mentioned, which is meant to give you euphoric, ecstatic states. There's meditation, there's yoga, tai chi, martial arts.
Spinning round in a circle.
Yeah, all these, shutting your eyes and pressing your fingers and your eyelids. There's all these different ways of getting high without drugs. And it is about that, reverting back to a childlike state of innocence. And I can't remember which scientist or psychiatrist it was that used to go out and play in the soil for 2 hours a day like a child. And that was meant to be really good for him. We are just, like Bram keeps talking about, patterns, and that's what we are. We are pattern-seeking cognitive beings. Parabolia is a great word about seeing shapes and seeing things and everything. Yeah, your brain's always seeking patterns. That's how it operates. And if you shit in a colander, you will still find traces of gold, and that is true both metaphorically and literally, because there is traces of gold in every human feces. But what I mean metaphorically is
whoa. Could you just go back there? Sorry.
What?
There is traces of gold on every.
There's grains of truth in everything.
All right. Okay. Everything. Yes.
But there's also literally gold in every human feces. Tiny amounts. That's a fact.
Yeah, and
fact of the day.
That's a really good point.
Is that actually a fact?
Yeah. There's gold in your shit. If you spend enough time paneling your shit, you will eventually, after a long time, have a tiny little amount of gold.
That's so true.
It's part of your body.
That's so true. And there's nuggets of truth in every single insight, every single person's experience, every single person's like valid way of telling their story will contain some insight for you. You can read all the books in the world, and you're still not going to be able to reduce like the value of a story you haven't heard. And all that pattern seeking, all that pattern finding, all that is in the service of storytelling. It's about the story you're telling yourself about the person you are. That's as rich as you want to make it.
Just about that, the pattern song that I played earlier on, because I didn't really talk about that earlier on, but that's obviously about just everything you're saying as well. Just like we trying to find the pattern and the chaos. We're trying to make sense of things. So it was a really important tool to help us to get to this where we are just now, is finding the patterns. And obviously the danger is though, when for your mental health, if you go looking for too many patterns, then you are going to get yourself into trouble as well. So it's kind of that's what the I can see patterns is about. But I suppose it kind of ties in as well about the synchronicity stuff as well. When something, I don't know if that maybe ties in with the magic as well, I'm not sure, but when something happens, such a weird coincidence happens at the same time, and it almost seems like it's a sign. Well, what would we say about that? Is it a sign?
Well, like what I was going to say there is not quite about synchronicity, but like that idea of patterns is like that's how we like there's like interesting like TED Talks and stuff about it that quite put it quite well in like just a wee 10 minutes about like how our perception and how we actually see the world isn't what the world is at all. And they've done so many, nothing's fact, because obviously that's not how it works, but there's loads and so many studies just about showing different ways how we can perceive everything that's around about us. That's what they think happens with trips, is that it just kind of like opens up a bit of our brain so we can kind of take in more than our brain lets us initially, that's what they think anyway, that how we perceive the world is just through this kind of pattern recognition. That's how you can kind of, you can develop good patterns or you can develop bad patterns in what you see, so and what you perceive or what you take in. So it's quite interesting just about from that perspective of like one of the examples was about yellow cars. I did like a training thing actually at work that was about this. It was about yellow cars. So you say like, how many yellow cars is there? Probably none now actually, but this was a while ago. So like, and folk are like, oh, there's hardly any yellow cars, but the person doing the training was like, well, see that over the next week, have a wee look about and see how many you see. And everybody come in and was like, I saw hundreds of yellow cars. What's that all about? But it's just because you've had something kind of flicked in your perception, like your whatever, the system that filters what gets through to your actual thinking brain and what doesn't. And it's saying, oh, actually, like there's a yellow car, there's a yellow car, but it's not because there's more yellow cars. It's just because you're kind of, you flick the switch.
Absolutely. And I think that just also
noticing. It's about noticing.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned Crowley earlier, Joe. Apparently, Crowley had a trick that he would do to prove that magic existed to people, and he would walk behind someone in the street, just someone random. He'd pick them at random, and he'd follow them, and he'd slowly start to copy their gait until he was copying it exactly. And then at some point, when he just perfectly mirrored their gait, he would trip, and the person in front of him would trip. And like that was his definition of magic was like aligning reality so that the synchronicity you desired occurred. But I'm going to plug my podcast again, because the guy that I've got on next month is a combat magician who works in curse breaking and curse setting. But he talks a lot about that and about the kind of use of magical intent to affect reality. Whether or not I believe in that, it was a really interesting conversation. So I hope you will tune in. That's some Strange Exiles.
Strange Exiles, by the way, feel free to plug. We're going to actually play one of your songs in a second as well, Bram.
But, yeah. Sorry, Mike,
Strange Exiles. It's plug texture time. Aye, but the Strange Exiles is a great name for a podcast. I've listened to episode 1. It's brilliant.
Talking about a lot of the stuff that we talked about tonight in terms of the perception of magic, the field of consciousness, the archetypes that exist within that.
Someone described it as Bram saying really upsetting things in a nice, relaxed way.
I listened to it today. It was good.
It's a brilliant podcast, man. So definitely check that out. Bram, and also the magician you're talking about in a weird way, in a wee bit of synchronicity, is the same magician that myself and Joe met in
that's right,
Brighton.
Cat Vincent. Yeah,
but just remember he was doing a course. Joe, do you remember he was doing a?
Was he cursing Boris Johnson
on Brexit? So Brexit wouldn't work.
Oh yeah.
So he knows Brahmin. So small world synchronicity. I had to mention. So Bram, I'm just going to play a little song. But we'll come back. We'll come back to wrap up. Where everyone will get one more chance to sort of talk about what the Age of Aquarius means to them and blah blah blah. Any questions? That's the time to ask now. But I just thought we'd play one of your tunes, Bram, since you're here, because you've got a new EP out. So I've got eliminated manuscripts, which I think kind of ties in with this quite nicely. Tell us a bit about the song.
Music first is produced by Susan, who's absolutely incredible producer, rapper, rap star, future star of rap. You should all go check him out. He folks with the Scoop Clan. That's where they find all his music. But yeah, the tune itself was kind of like an orphan from the writing of the new album. The new album's called Illuminate, and this is Illuminated Manuscripts. And it's about that idea of the surviving texts and how they're incomplete, and how that knowledge of ancient wisdom, ancient practices, ancient rituals goes really deep. It appears as archetypes in our storytelling. We all know there's something to the pyramids, to stone circles, to the solstice, to the movement of the planets and the stars. and that science itself is a journey into exploring that. You know, sending probes to Venus or Saturn or Mars is the same thing as the dream making of myth. So yeah, that's the kind of shit that I rap about, and yeah, this tune is about that.
Illuminated manuscripts, imperial passages. This language is the last of us. This revelation is alchemical, a chemical poetry that describes the cascading degrees of permutation of a living simulation of platonic solids, transfigured into shadows and cave walls, filtered through every flood myth and megalithic architectural arcana. Carefully positioned to bring forth a standing wave, we quarry stone with vibrational tremors, laser corrected through complex centrifugal tempos, aligned along the axis of a constant constellation, traced against the belts of dead heroes or the eyes of our absent fathers. Antediluvian brain chemistry is the mainstay against heresy, doves cast from topsail and brought down by ravens. Bow wood bound down crystal plinths on sacred waters. Watchers wait by circles of stone in holy moonlight. Blood spilled upon sigils, complex genomic synthesis, altered and adapted, mixed with mutagens and virulent pathogens, inoculating us against spiritual arrogance. Yeah, this path is a labyrinth, a door opened by ghost walkers, the sight of the home straight on a close time-like curve as we drift past Saturn and say peace to the ashes of Yuri Gagarin. We are the living flesh encoded in holy holographic antimatter, left battling appearance in the semiotic fallout. A godless trinity of indestructible energy ever living in the eternity of now, to transmute base materials into worthless displays of glittering perfection is the curse of our awareness. Trapped inside this predator's gaze, we are the minotaurs at the center of every possible maze, and simultaneously we are the silver thread leading upward towards sunlight. Don't turn your head to watch the passage of your beloved, lest they get sucked down beneath the pitch dark waters of the Styx. Flying too close to the sun, our wax wings will melt down like gold flake candles, burning out to sputter in the darkness with a small spark that becomes conscious. At the end of time, your body will become stardust, gathered in the absent light of extinguished suns, until the dark embraces every single one, just as we forgive our sons. Yeah, an eternity in the space-time between zeros and ones. Between zeros and ones. Yeah, listen, illuminated manuscripts, imperial passages, traces of a race we ran, language is the last of us. Illuminated manuscripts, imperial passages. Illuminated manuscripts, imperial passages, traces of the race we ran, language is the last of us. Illuminated manuscripts, imperial passages, traces of a race we ran, language is the last of us. This language is the last of us.
You call that radio?
You call that radio?
What about the people who hated on me?
Right, and then I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in a minute.
That's mad, isn't it? Is this a Netflix thing? It's actually a podcast. What the fuck's a podcast? You know, it's kind of like a radio show. Oh, that radio! Yeah.
And is there a way we can do something like that?
I couldn't help it.
By injection inside or
Yeah, I think so because I think it's pain in general because I think like my poem is in my painting.
No, cut. Brilliant stuff and texture. We are with Chris, Joe, Bonnie, texture, as we try to get to the bottom of what the Age of Aquarius is and what it will mean. And we have a great tune there. Bram, how can people
Just basically
get that
head to
tune and
Bandcamp.
other tunes like that?
Head to Bandcamp if you want to buy some t-shirts. That's the best way to support an artist these days, is buy a t-shirt. Texture.bandcamp.com. But it's streaming everywhere. As with most artists, my music's kind of free everywhere. So check that out. May even put out the footage from Capture Works of us doing that tune if it becomes available in the next couple of months. But yes, it's free to stream everywhere, man.
Brilliant stuff. And we're just going to talk about briefly, I know that we'll maybe come back to that, Joe. Comments. We'll do that first. Do the comments first. So, cool stuff musically and lyrically. It reminds me of Reggie Watts. Will you take that, Bram?
Nice. I will definitely take that, man. Definitely. Cheers to that.
Petra says, love it. Ewan says, top tune. And also that Crowley cursed the town I live in, Eastbourne.
That's true.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Did it work? Or... Well, did you notice anything, Mako? He says 23 Skidoo. 23 Skidoo. What's this? The number 23 obviously is an important thing. I see someone else has talked about the Robert Anton Wilson books, which I would recommend everyone to check out. Robert Anton Wilson.
Read them, 23 starts appearing everywhere, just like you were talking about with the yellow car there.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that, you know, David Blair always talks about his Universe 23 Universe is his podcast and his promotions company, and we might see him tomorrow, I'm assuming, because we've got Colin Mustard and the Dijon 5 Christmas special tomorrow night on You Call That Radio. Max Thompson on Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday. It's that Christmas, the Christmas bug of forgetting what day it is has already started. And then we've got the Christmas Eve awards ceremony and the Boxing Day Overhead in the West End special. So it's still a busy week ahead. Age of Aquarius, Dirty Earth. What does Age of Aquarius mean to you? What do you hope it could mean?
I think it's gonna be about balancing ourselves, this masculine and feminine energy between us and externally, inside us and externally. But I think that mainly what we need right now is a lot of fun, isn't it? And dancing and hugging and community. Raising communities outside of this shit system that we've got is the way forward, I think. Protecting nature, that's what we should be doing. I don't know what we will be doing. There seems to be a lot of apathy. So I'm hoping that the groups of us that are less apathetic will get together and keep making the world's, the little bubbles that we're in, a nicer place. And I hope that eventually that niceness overtakes that fear and shit, basically. And also the virus fucks off. That'd be quite good as well, wouldn't it?
That would be lovely. That would be lovely if the virus did fuck off. We've got, Chris Rocky, what does Age of Aquarius mean to you, or what do you hope it could mean?
They should give me to the virus and then maybe it'll fuck off. I'll be the virus to the virus, I'm sure. The Age of Aquarius really means nothing to me, but it is important to know that we are standing on a precipice right now, and we are at the helm and we are in the driving seat, all of us individually, but also all of us collectively. And one thing history's taught us, talking about patterns, is paradigm shifts come off the back of major wars, they come off the back of major technological advancements, they come off the back of pandemics, and they come off the back of industrial revolutions and stuff like that. And so we're getting hit with all that shit at once. We're going to have great technological advancement. We're in a pandemic right now. And it does show, it exposes what doesn't work and what does work. And it always kind of, in the end, humans are adaptable, and a flower probably will grow out of the shit, yeah.
Well, I suppose it's quite interesting that you say that, because I suppose really after the World War II, I mean, that's why we got things like the NHS that would have been it would never have happened had it not been
major technological advancements, because of
and all the major technology that came from the weapons that can get used for other things. And I suppose we're seeing that. We've already seen that already in the case of the vaccine. I don't want to get a vaccine conversation. Don't bother in the comments, please. But listen, Joe's not about vaccines. But I suppose what is unearthed, one of the problems in the system is how long it takes to get through something in the medical world. And now with them, when you remove bureaucracy and you add money and interest in it, then when there's money to be lost as well, it shows that maybe the things can be speeded up, and maybe that could also be the case for other treatments, hopefully. So maybe that's something as well. And yeah, I suppose what you said, it's something is happening. I mean, people are. It's going to bring out the best and the worst in
There's always
humanity.
a silver light. Look at this show. I mean, you've now built this podcast, which you probably wouldn't have done if there hadn't been a pandemic. You would have still went. And now when that's over, you're going to still have this sort of empire, if you want to call it that you've built with your... And done
I don't want to call it that.
I don't know.
Maybe empire. An empire.
This dictatorship that you've built. But it's a great thing you've done. You've kept everyone entertained. You've kept the live music, local music vibe coming into people's homes. And I really love when I was watching Capture Works, it made me feel like I was 11 years old. And I used to stay up late and watch like really anarchic music Channel 4 shows. Do you know what I mean? And it's that kind of sketchy, brilliant, anything could fucking happen kind of vibe. I think it's great, yeah. And all the great acts, of course. Brilliant performances. Yeah, it's great.
It's a Marketopia.
Yeah, so kind of like it does kind of have that low budget television vibe to it, doesn't it? So yeah, what was going to I'm just going to go through some comments here. Yeah, Mondito says when things start appearing after finding out about them, the yellow cars, it's called, is it Bader-Meinhof phenomenon?
Yeah.
And Marco says it's not cursed, it's just pretty dull. We've got
about his hometown.
Ali says, I think, Mark, I think you're right. It's good to have ordinary folk talking about this topic in a non-academic way. It's cool. I agree.
Non-academic.
Okay, maybe.
I know what you mean. I know.
Yeah.
I apologise if I brought the tone down.
Love it, says Petra. Oh, we got that one. Someone said, who was it? It was Sharon, I think. It's having a. Oh yeah. Colette says, in Dolly Parton's hobby is well. Would you do an angel card for Kale?
I've not got any angel cards, but I can do a emotions card. I'll do an emotions card. Right, I'll just pull one out. I think we'll have to give a little shuffle. Give a little shuffle. Right, pack. Oh, that's nice. Friendship. I understand that a friend is in my life for a reason. Look at that.
Oh.
That's nice.
Community, friendship, it's all about that. Like, that's what we need. Love.
Absolutely. And let Dolly know. Dolly know. We've got. So we do golden jobbies. Yes, we do. I asked that a few times just to verify, and it seems like we do golden jobbies. Sharon says that Ryan forgot to deliver the t-shirts like you, Mark. Will you let it go, Sharon? Come on. I was late with a t-shirt delivery. You got it. And I'm sorry for it being late. I have apologised. And also for anyone, if you are waiting a t-shirt, it should be with you just now as well. Our normal supplier is the amazing Parallel Prints from Mandy, who does an amazing work. Her printer broke down, and she had to buy an entire new printer, had to relearn the printer as her orders kept backlogging up. So it was a delay on the Who Took Utopia t-shirts, but they have all been sent out. So if you've not got it today, people have been started to take pictures of them arriving. So if you've not got it yet, it should be there.
Can I just say on t-shirt delivery, so the longest, so the Tory Cunts t-shirts that got sent out on the 21st of November, a girl's just received hers 2 days ago. She messaged me to say, I've not got my t-shirt, and surely it would have arrived by now, about a week ago. And it just arrived, not today, on Saturday it arrived. So almost a month. If anybody's thinking, I've not got my t-shirt yet, it's who knows what's going on.
Yeah, it might not actually be my fault for a change. It might actually
be. A good
t-shirt's
worth the wait, Mark. It's worth the wait.
Yeah. Well, it will be worth the wait, I'm sure. So we got, wow, thanks, says Colette. Chris, I wouldn't listen to a bunch of academics for 3 hours. Correct. That would be annoying, wouldn't it? As Bucky said, we need to focus on living Ray, not killing Ray.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Sorry, I don't get that. What is killing Ray?
Kilwinning.
Persuasion.
Co-winning. We need to focus on co-winning. We need to focus on Livingston, not co-winning. What was Livingston won, co-winning? No. Remote viewing. Tam's just popped up with remote viewing, which is or remote viewer, which is really interesting. There's a good documentary. I can't remember what it is, but it was about how the CIA were interested in it and they hired people to do remote viewings. And there's some really kind of weird coincidences about what happened to those people.
Montauk experiments. Shout out that documentary as well.
The what? Sorry.
The Montauk experiments. It's about all sorts of CIA mind control shit that actually did happen in other places, and then they investigate whether it happened in this big underground joint, and the conclusions are very inconclusive. It's great.
Inconclusive conclusions. I like that.
My favorite kind.
And yeah, I mean, I remember first hearing about remote viewing when I just watched a kind of documentary. It might have even been Tomorrow's World or something, but I remember being really young and watching the idea of it was quite fascinating to me. And I remember I did, and then I watched something later on when I was kind of like sort of younger, teenage years. I watched it as well, and I remember trying to actually do it. And the problem with remote viewing is, of course, you don't actually know if you're seeing it or not. But at the end of the day, there's people out there that say that they've proved it to themselves and they are remote viewing. And who am I to say it's not real?
It was legitimately researched by the CIA. Like that is a fact. Undeniable.
Well, that's a fact that they used it. They were using it during the Cold War. They were using it as a weapon, basically, to see what was happening.
Yeah, some fucked up shit.
It's just about tapping into the collective consciousness, and you can access it all. And it is real. The CIA did major. They used it to spy on the Russians. Yeah. I mean, it is all totally verified. It does get lumped in with conspiracy theory stuff, but MK Ultra, it's very real. Check it out.
Oh, yeah, the borders between this stuff are porous. I'm sure you know that, Chris. You know, and from your looking into it as well. And it's, you know, I was going to say this as well. Like, you know, the Age of Aquarius and all that stuff. It's sensible to be cautious of the words of like prophets, gurus, or anybody who claims any sort of authority. But that doesn't mean that they haven't all got like really interesting shit to say, like interesting theories about the world. But if you ask me, like, who's a guide to reality right now, it would be like the novels of Philip K. Dick. This guy was writing about a fractured, dissolving reality where people are alienated from each other, where psychological symptoms are part of the reaction to the formation of society. So that would be my final like reading recommendation off the back of tonight's chat. Would be read some Philip K. Dick. He talks about all of this stuff. And any guy who can write in the 1960s about the concept of not being able to leave your house because you owe your door lock money has got like a bit of a jump on the reality that we're living in right now.
Absolutely. As you get you see, was it like, I don't know, I'm not really that up to date in pop culture as such, but I know I've noticed there's a lot of sort of celebrities. I'll see a name briefly. I don't know if it's Kardashians or whoever, but they're all taking flack because they're getting caught having wild parties in the islands where the crew are obviously working. They're saying things like, well, we're going to get all our friends, we all self-isolated for 14 days. And then I took them to an island as a surprise kind of thing. And obviously the workers aren't isolated. So I think that there is, if you're a millionaire, then of course, life's not, you're still going to be able to have the better things in life. You're still going to be able to go on holiday and things like that. So I suppose that is a very interesting. What would you say with Philip K. Dick? What would you recommend would be a good starting point?
I think, any of his novels deal with the condition of living in a reality where there's control and where there's like a sense of slippage, where your identity could be taken from you, where your sense of what's real could be taken from you, where it could turn out that your history is a lie, or that the way that you frame reality is a lie. So it's full of all sorts of scenarios where you question reality. And I think that that's the kind of seeking that we've been talking about, is like trying to figure out what the real pattern is behind things. If there's some sort of explanation. And maybe his conclusion is that there is no explanation. But then again, he did end up believing that there was an explanation. He believed he was hit by an information-rich pink laser, which traveled directly into his forehead and revealed the reality. He was a reincarnation of a Christian missionary from Roman times. and that in actual fact the Roman times had never ended, and that that we were living in a kind of simulation, which was to distract us from the fact we were still living as some repressed Christians under Roman rule. So again, you know, the guy who was maybe the clearest guide to our weird virtual reality that we live in, also believes some very weird shit. And I think that's an interesting place to leave it.
Brilliant stuff, Bram. And Chris, was there anything you would like to add for the reading list?
Yeah, I'll keep it in the theme. There was a book I read like 6, 7. Well, Bram was also in theme, obviously. I didn't mean that. But there was a book I read several years ago called The Lost Star of Myth and Time by Walter Cruttenden. And that talks about everything we've been talking about tonight, about how the movement of the planets. And I think he hypothesized that Earth was twinned with another sun and they were in orbit. I'm not saying it's all true. I'm just saying it's a fascinating read. And anything that I'm reading I just finished Secret History of the World. That was quite interesting. That was like told from the perspective of esoteric secret societies. I would suggest looking up some lectures by Randall Carlson if you want to know about like sacred geometry, and he does all this. I've got an interesting fact here. I'll just quickly give you, right? We're talking about patterns, so it ties in well. The diameter of the sun is about 108 times that of the diameter of Earth, right? The average distance between the sun and the Earth is 108 times the sun's diameter. The average diameter from the Earth to the moon is 238,000 miles, which is 108 times the moon's diameter. So we're talking about seeing numerology and patterns and everything, and it goes right up into a grand cosmic scale. It's interesting, but you don't want to get obsessed with it, because then you end up seeing it in everything, like we were saying earlier, like that Jim Carrey movie, innit?
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was called.
23, isn't it?
23, yeah.
I think it's called 23.
The Gonzo Division was created on the 12th of the 12th, 2012, and our first gig assignment was 21-12-12. There's some more numerology.
Now it's 21, 12, 20.
Today it's 21,
and you've
12.
pulled out a number 8 out your tarot card or something.
And it's
like
our
that.
8th anniversary of our live gig, which was Cullen. The first gig review we ever did was Cullen at King Tut's, and that was 21-12-12, which was the Mayan end of the world. So there was a paradigm shift then, Bram. It was the birth of the Gonzo Division in Glasgow. Maybe.
It was also the week the Bust Out Apocalypse was released. So
was it?
Yes, it was as well. So yeah, we got the Bonnie. I'm going to finish with Joe because I want to get your last thing about it, what you think. But Bonnie, is there anything else? Read? Oh, can you just show us that book again? Actually, you had a really good psychedelic. That psychedelic. Is it feminine? The feminine or something like that.
That one.
Yes, psychedelic mysteries of the feminine.
Yeah, I could put that. I would just say actually that a good film to watch or a documentary to watch for talking about normal people, talking about this sort of stuff, is Talking with Gods, the Grant Morrison documentary. That's well worth a look. They'll carry on with what we've all been talking about tonight as well, and how he used magic really, or how he feels that magic affected his life and moved him on as an artist and a writer. So that's
Grant Morrison, absolute legend as well. And I don't know if I've seen Talking with Gods, but I have seen him talking about
Pop Magic as well, which is an essay that you can get for free on the internet if you are interested in exploring kind of like modern magic practice. Pop Magic's an incredible place to start, and it's free.
Grant Morrison
totally
went to he said that he went to India to meet a god, aliens or something like that. I think that's the same thing he talks about, and he did it with he smoked a bit of weed and he met the aliens or something like that. Interesting. We're going to definitely check it. Talking with Gods, I'll definitely check out. Pop Magic was the essay, and Joe. So just to kind of sort of tie it, because I'm going to finish with the Minerva Wake song. Obviously, you've been working on the Minerva Wakes album, which is now finished finally, and you must feel good about that. So just tell us a little bit about the Minerva Wakes project, and because I think a lot of it kind of ties in with what we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah, so Minerva Wakes is a kind of, well, myself and Nikki, who are the Twistettes, Nikki's my sister. So obviously, if people know the Twistettes, we're a kind of loud, punky kind of band. But we've kind of slowly over quite a few years just like dipped in and out of this kind of electronic project that I suppose kind of started. I was a kind of techno DJ, and it was kind of just at this very initially, it was just as kind of dubstep was starting to bubble about, and we really quite liked a lot of those sounds. It kind of appealed to, obviously, since we you know, that kind of bass heavy kind of thing is obviously what we're into. But yeah, we just kind of started toying about with that quite a long time ago, actually, and then it's just been something that's just kind of sat on my computer, and I've just kind of dabbled about with them. Like Nikki programmed the drums, and I kind of did all the rest of the instruments and the singing, all kind of electronically. But it's kind of like trip hop with dubstep, vocal, kind of quite a lot of harmonies, quite industrial sounding kind of music. And I suppose like the name Minerva Wakes, Minerva's like a Roman goddess. So that's kind of, we were kind of going down that because I've like been heavy for the past few years, kind of getting into that kind of spiritual stuff and kind of looking at kind of that kind of vibe has been kind of around a lot. So it's just kind of, the music has ended up being this kind of concept album about the goddess awakening, kind of, and something like maybe today, maybe not necessarily actually right now, but waking in modern times and kind of investigating that, seeing what's going on, and kind of her reaction to that. So it's the album's kind of 3 spoken word pieces throughout the album, and then kind of 8 tracks, all kind of weaving together this concept. I've also written like a kind of short story type thing that goes along with it and expands a bit more on what the concept of the album is as well. And I've got kind of artwork and everything. So it's become this, obviously because of lockdown and I've had time, it's kind of become this this kind of thing that kind of multi-art form thing. So I'm really looking forward to getting out there. I can't wait to play it live, because hopefully it's going to just be really bassy and really I'm going to enjoy just like getting my chest vibrated. We're talking about that kind of the sound of that drum earlier on, that kind of thing you get at a live gig. So yeah, so that is, and I maybe just also to mention, I went to India last year, and I think like a lot of that experience kind of has been woven into this album as well, from the music to the just the kind of general experience that I had as well. And I suppose this also ties in, so I'm just like waffling on, I'll wind up in a minute, but the just like in relation to what we were kind of talking about, the kind of tarot and this whole kind of thing, and synchronicity as well, as when I went to India, I was going to do yoga, and I like took loads of advice from people about what to do, and everyone's like, just stay in the bit that you're going to, that's kind of that's it's a big place and you just want to soak up the atmosphere and things like that. So that was what I planned to do, but I get this thing of like, I just felt pulled to go, and sometimes I roll my eyes at that kind of thing, but it genuinely was what happened. I just felt like I had to go, I needed to go further north, and ended up kind of going to Rishikesh, and again, which is a yoga place, so maybe that's just like why, you know, you could say, is it synchronicity, is it not? I don't know, but ended up in Rishikesh and loved it. Felt like the energy there is just insane anyway, I think, but just really had a bit of a experience to myself actually there. And then when I came back, I've always known that I've got kind of Roma in my family, and that's kind of my pappy's dad was Roma, and there's with the tarot and stuff as well that we're talking about. That's kind of all, I've always kind of known that, but for some reason when I came back, I kind of felt like I wanted to look into that more. And then on reading a bit more about where, well, partly my family, and then partly where like the Roma people originally came from. Again, they don't know for sure, but they think North India is where they kind of very originally came from. And it's really within like an hour and a half drive of where I ended up. And India's fucking massive. It takes, you know, it's like massive. You can't, like, it's almost like ending up next door to And I just thought, again, is that just because I ended up going to the other yoga place in India? It could just be that, but was there something in that? I don't know whether that's synchronicity thing. So anyway, that's my big long rambling thing about Minerva Wakes, and how
What does
it
Age of
came
Aquarius?
about.
What
What's
do you
that?
hope Age of Aquarius? What do you hope Age of Aquarius could mean for everyone?
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully, I mean, I think what Bonnie mentioned about like that kind of merging of kind of masculine and feminine energies, maybe. So again, what I don't know how much, you know, what I don't know, but if you're going to kind of look at the different ages that Chris had kind of talked about them earlier on, and I can't remember what they are in order, but the last age that had quite a lot of feminine energy was, I can't remember what sign it was. I want to say maybe not Taurus, the one before Taurus, whatever that one was. And that was when there was like lots of kind of goddess worship, and women were actually like kind of a big deal within society in many ways. But over I think there's like another 3 kind of ages or kind of signs that have kind of passed since then. There's been this kind of increase of kind of masculine energy, and this is, again, whether you believe it or not, I don't even know if I do, but I think it's interesting and I maybe believe it, but this idea of kind of growing masculine energy, this where it became, you know, the powerful man, the hero, this kind of putting, you know, all that kind of stuff that is increased over when you're talking about the Spartans and all that kind of thing. These are all the ages that's increased across until you've come to now. But Aquarius is where they think that kind of changes, and you bring in a bit more feminine energy again, and maybe that talking about feeling and energy and the stuff that's a bit more esoteric, ethereal kind of vibe thing, and not so based on kind of intellect and matter and reality. And this is because if you look at, sorry, this is the last thing I want to say, but if you look at kind of Hindu mythology, like kind of Shiva and Shakti are the kind of 2, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and that's kind of where they kind of sit, is that Shakti is actually the energy that defines all, and it's in everything. And Shiva is much more the kind of grounding kind of, this is, you know, reality kind of creating kind of bit. So I've completely rambled there. That's me.
That's amazing, though. It's brilliant. And thank you to everybody for rambling on with us. And it's 3 hours and 15 minutes. So I think we're going to wrap up with a Minerva Wakes song. It's Tell Me. Oscar Jam on the video did a great job. And we'll be back tomorrow night with Colonel Mustard and the Dijon 5 doing a Christmas special. Check out, if you want to hear more of this kind of stuff, check out Bram's Strange Exiles podcast, which is going to have lots of that kind of stuff. Check out Chris's Gonzo Division writings as well. Bonnie, have you got anything to plug at the moment?
Yeah, you can go to my Etsy shop and buy my intuitive sculptures that are full of my yoni magic. So yeah, you can go and do some of that.
How would they find the Etsy shop?
It's called Dirty Earth.
Dirty Earth and Etsy. Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Amazing. And Joe, when's the Minerva Wakes album out? Have you got a date for it?
I think I'm going to go for the 21st of March.
Because it's got a cool 21, 3rd, 21.
Yeah, there's good numbers in there, isn't there? Yeah.
Sounds good. So, but the numbers, brilliant stuff. Thank you, guys. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight. It's been a lot of fun. And we will see you tomorrow night for Colonel Mustard. This Minerva Wakes. Tell me. Just want to say that we've got, just as we left, it's at 23 viewers. You know what I mean? So it's thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight. See
You call that radio, radio, radio. More